Well, good morning. I'm going to start up. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am starting up. And if you cannot hear me okay, hopefully you're going to yell out, email me or whatever. I do leave my email up and running, all right, while we're in here to go on. Now, I'm going to start, and can you tell me, because I know we went through this yesterday and I don't want to do it again, can you see my screen? Right now I've got my Outlook screen up.
Not yet. All I see is just kind of like your name on the screen.
So let's see if we can fix that. Did that help?
Yes.
Okay.
I can see right now.
Great. All right, so I'm going to start up in just a second. Let me get back into here. And I want to come in and hit here, and start recording. All right, so I'm going to start up. Again, good morning to class. This is the second day. What you are going to find today is probably for about the first half hour. There will be some review of yesterday. There were people who emailed me last night and said they had problems getting onto the system or whatever. I had problems with my machine last night. Those problems have been rectified, so there's a few things I just want to mention to you about what's going on in here. So the first thing, as you can see here, or hopefully you can see, is I sent you 4 links this morning. All right, I just did right before class. You don't have to go to any of them. I'm not going to go to any of them right now. The first one is the Microsoft Developer Network, and you can see the URL there for that. All right. In fact, if you just go out to developer.microsoft.com, it should get you there. And the advantage of going there, and I guess I will bring that one up, the advantage of going there is what that gives you. This is the Microsoft Developer Network right here. And if you come into the search bar in the upper right-hand corner and you type in C#, you can see C# docs, getting started, tutorial references, programming guide. So there's a lot of different stuff in there. Sometimes what people tell me is, yeah, I'm getting some stuff out of the class. I don't really like the book. I learn better from seeing videos, etc. And like I said, everybody learns differently. I can appreciate that. Another one that I put up there was W3 School C# tutorial. Now, several of the people in this class were in my AWD1100 class last semester on website design. And in that class, we looked at W3 School's tutorials for HTML, the hypertext markup language, CSS, which are cascading style sheets, JavaScript, and even some other stuff. But in here, again, this is a free resource, and they go through an entire tutorial. They've got exercises, as you can see, learn by examples type of thing. So there's a lot of stuff in there if you're interested in that. Couple more. I found this online. I have not gone through it, but I noticed it had 4.5 stars, which is pretty good. 26,000 students. There's a company that I take courses from online called Udemy, udemy.com. And when I typed in free C# learning resources, this is one of the ones that came up. It's an entire free class that you can go and you can enroll in. Now, they do ask you to register for the class. There's no credit card or anything like that. And they do occasionally send you emails to let you know that they've got paid courses that are on sale. But it's another one you may or may not want to look at. Finally, the last one, this is a site I've used for different classes in the past. It's called guru99.com. And if you see in here, they have a C# tutorial. I mean, if I go in and type in C# into Google, I'm going to get millions of hits. Are there resources better than the 4 I just gave you? Probably. There's just a lot of resources, period. I'm going to look through this article that I found, 9 free C# courses and tutorials for beginners. And if nothing else, I'll at least send you the link to this, but I'll go through them and see if they look like they're any good or not. All right. So the second part of that email talked a little bit about, again, what we're doing today. I'm going to go over that in just a minute. It says, yesterday was the first day of class. As part of the class, we created 2 relatively simple console applications as a class. I'm going to go back and I'm going to redo them again this morning, not to waste my time, not to waste your time. But there are several people, like I said, who emailed me saying they had problems yesterday. So I'm going to try to do this. All right? So that's the first thing. The next thing, just so you're aware of this, if you go out to YouTube, youtube.com, and you type in there Jeff Scott-Rankin Technical College, and you click on the search bar, you will find in there near the top, you will find my YouTube channel. So if you click on Jeff Scott Rankin Technical College, you'll see a bunch of stuff in here, including this is the lecture that I did yesterday. You'll notice that I put everything in one file, and it's AWD1100 C# programming day number 1, 1/5/2022. And it's 3 hours and 14 plus minutes. All right, I will put this stuff out there every single day. In addition to this, you should have gotten 1 or 2 emails from me yesterday, and at least one of those emails should have had a link to the actual Teams thing that was copied. I'm not sure if that worked or not. All right, but again, you should have, for virtually every day of class, you'll get 2 resources from me that will have the stuff that we went over on the previous day. All right, so again, these are those URLs that I mentioned to you. And let's see. So this is what we did yesterday. I'm literally going to spend, time me if you want, 5 minutes on this to show people what we did in the first day of class. So I went over the syllabus, all right, the beginning of the syllabus and the first week or so of classes, and we talked about the fact that since this is an online class, the procedures are a little bit different. Other than this first week, basically every Sunday, you're going to have homework due. You are more than welcome to turn in that homework ahead of time. All right, but if you turn in nothing that is due, all right, by that Sunday at midnight, then you are marked absent for that week. If you turn in any work, anything, for that, and we'll talk about what that work is in just a couple minutes, you're marked present for the week. That's how evidently they do it with online classes. All right, I talked a little bit about work ethic, but it doesn't pertain exactly to this course because we are in an online format. Still, it's important. One of the things I try to dispel on you is a positive work ethic. Finally, I mentioned in here, we do have a licensed social worker at Rankin. Her name is Michelle Riley, a terrific person, and she seems to be fantastic at her job. And she's at M.A. Riley, or Ma Riley, if you want to look at it that way, at rankin.edu. She's more than willing to work with you if you ever encounter any problems, anything in your personal life, if it's interfering with your school life, etc. And like I said, she's just a very good person and very good at her job. After we did that, I went over how to install Git. And we're going to talk more about Git today and tomorrow on your machine. And I actually went through the steps. I uninstalled the Git that I have on my machine, and I reinstalled it. So that stuff is out there. Then I went through installing C# on the machine. All right? And what I recommend you install when you install C# on the machine. Then we did the same thing where I started to go through GitHub and show you. Now, the reason that you need Git and the reason that you need GitHub, all right, Git is a software version control system. And if that makes no sense to you, we're going to start working with it in earnest tomorrow, all right? But GitHub is something that you don't need to use Git with GitHub, but most people do. It's actually what it does is it's going to allow you to save all of the work that you do out to the cloud. So I'll be able to take a look at it. We'll go over that, like I said, in more depth and breadth of coverage tomorrow. All right? After we went over that, I went over the PowerPoint slides for Chapter 1 of the Muroc text. All right, so I went over Chapter 1. And I talked a little bit about the homework and the labs, etc. There is no homework, there are no labs for Chapter 1. So today we're going to look at Chapter 2, and we'll do the same kind of thing. Then we wrote a couple console programs. We didn't get into GUI, but we wrote a couple console programs that I'm going to rewrite for you. We did those as a class, all right, or I at least asked people to follow along as I did them. I'm going to replicate that today. Then we went over and reviewed all of the material that we'd covered. Finally, I mentioned to people that there is a site called goalkicker.com, and they provide a lot of free IT, information technology resources, including a C# book, which comes in a free PDF format you can download. It's several hundred pages long. Now, do you need that? Of course not. But if you're interested in getting even more information than you think I'm giving you, or than you think you're getting in the class, that's just another resource for you. Finally, I just gave a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. So, speaking of which, let's talk about today. All right? The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to entertain any questions that anybody had from last period. If there is anything that we went over that didn't make sense to you, this is the time you can ask about it. So, does anyone have any questions?
I'm sorry, I must have passed 30 seconds. What was that?
What I said was, if you were either in class yesterday, or if you watched the tape from yesterday, the video, and you had any, did anybody have any questions from any of that material?
Okay.
No questions.
Okay. So what we'll do today is, again, I just want to mention to you what Git is. I want to mention to you what GitHub is. Then I'm going to go back, and before we do this review exercise, I'm going to go back and redo the programs that I did for you yesterday. Now, I'm going to do them kind of quickly, not to confuse anyone, but some of you people heard it once or twice yesterday. All right? Then we'll go back and have this review. We'll quickly review Chapter 1 again. I'm not going to typically go back and review what we did the day before, but since, like I said, it was the first day, I'm going to do that. Do a quick little review of Visual Studio, talk about our book, and then go over the slides for Chapter 2, which will not take long. Then actually go over Chapter 2, and we're going to write some more programs. Then, as we did yesterday, we'll review the material we covered today, and I'll explain to you what we'll be going over tomorrow. All right? Now, yesterday's class lasted almost the entire period. Probably. Today's will be pretty similar in nature. All right? I don't know. All right? You'll know, I guess, when I know or as I know. So the first thing that I'm going to do is very quickly, and I showed these resources yesterday, but again, I want to show them today. I'm trying to be complete here. And that is, I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to type in right here, I'm just going to go into YouTube. So youtube.com, and if you don't have any idea what Git is and what GitHub is, all right, I recommend that you type in here Colt Steele, Colt like a horse, Steele, S-T-E-E-L-E, and you type in Git. All right, if you do that and you click the search, you're going to get in here both of his presentations. Learn Git in 15 minutes and learn GitHub in 15 minutes. Colt does a wonderful job in these two free videos of explaining what Git is and explaining what GitHub is. Again, in a nutshell, by you utilizing Git and GitHub, you are going to save the work that you're working on to the cloud and sending me an invite to it so that I will be able to look at and eventually grade your work. All right? So that's all I wanted to say about that. So before we do this review exercise, which we will do, all right, I'm going to come back in here. Now, I came in yesterday and close all this stuff I've got open. I created this folder called Payroll JPS, and it's got the information we went over yesterday. I even zipped that file and emailed it to you. But I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to end up copying some of that material in, but it's still, I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm assuming that you've all downloaded C# on your system, or you're doing it now. All right, and what I mean by that is Visual Studio. So if you don't have a desktop shortcut like I have right here, then you come in here and in your Windows search, you type in Visual Studio. All right, and you'll see there's Visual Studio 2022. So you can open it from there, or you can right mouse click on there and tell it to pin it to the taskbar. I just unpinned it, but if I right mouse click and choose pin to start or pin to taskbar, all right, it'll do so. Well, now it's not allowing me to pin it, but that's okay. All right, so here it is. Again, this is the stuff that we did as a group yesterday. I'm going to occasionally have to bop out of here and check my emails just to make sure. All right, Michael says, I've been trying to get into Zoom and I'm not having any luck. It shows that I'm waiting and it looks like the meeting hasn't started yet. Well, that means I have to go back here, go to here, and Michael, did that get you in? All right. Because I'm supposed to be able to do this. It says accepted, and I request to join. All right. But when I do that request like that, it brings him in, but it immediately kicks him out. All right. I'm not sure what the problem is. All right. This is going to be, unfortunately, I think, a kind of a recurring problem in here. All right. So let's see, send a quick message, contact. He says he's offline. I will tell him, I'm just going to quickly answer him and say, please keep trying. Session is being recorded. So, hi, Michael. Sorry you're having problems. Session is being recorded. I'll try to fix during first break. All right, that's not going to help him much, but like I said, I just do want to get going. All right, so I'm in here now. In fact, it looks like I'm in here kind of funky, so I'm going to get back in again. So I'm going to say Visual Studio, and I don't want Visual. You don't want Visual Studio Code if you've got them both. So Visual Studio 2022, there it is. I'm going to click there. There it's starting up. That's what it should look like when you start. Again, yours should look similar to this, but unless you were here yesterday, this might be empty because you haven't created anything yet. I'm going to come in and create a brand new project. All right, right there. And what that brand new project is going to do in a moment is I'm going to put a project in there and a solution. When I do that, that will create a new folder in here that's going to hold all my stuff. Now, you'll see in here we've got console app twice. I don't want either of these. Instead, I want to go up into the search bar and type in console, and I want to choose the one that says console app.frame network C#. Now, I can either click on this and choose next, or I can just double click on this, which does the same thing. All right, so like we did yesterday, I'm going to make a project and I'm going to call it Payroll 01. Now you'll see that on mine, I've changed it so that it automatically saves things to my desktop. Yours may look different right now. So if you want it to be to your desktop or to some other folder, you click the ellipsis here, and I'm just going to choose, I've already got desktop chosen, so it says desktop down here, and then you just click the select folder, and then yours should be at your desktop or whatever you selected. Now, by default, the project name and the solution name, and if you don't know what they are, you're going to see them in 30 seconds. They have the same name. I don't want them to have the same name. I'm going to put multiple projects inside of this solution. I've already got a solution called Payroll, and I've got one called Payroll JPS, so I'm just going to call this solution Payroll C#. And it says, I don't like that character, so I'm going to type in C#, just like that, Payroll C#. When you are creating project names, locations, and solution names, do not put in any blank spaces. Do not put any special characters in, like apostrophes, asterisks, etc. So you've got your project name, where the project will be located, the solution name, leave that off, and if we wanted to, we could click here and change our framework, but using 4.7.2 is just fine. So then we click Create. Some magic will happen behind the scenes, and in a matter of seconds, you're going to see this. So what did we just get here? All right, we just created a new solution called Payroll C#, and it has inside of it a folder, which is a project that's called Payroll 01. Now, the only file in here in this particular project that you should be touching is the one that's showing on the screen, and it's program.cs. All right? The other ones have got system files in there. So there's some assembly info. You shouldn't touch this because it can break your program. All right? You've got another thing in there with a bunch of references, such as system reference. And, it's just a bunch of pictures and stuff, but you shouldn't touch those either. So you should just make sure that your properties and your references are both closed. There's an app config file, which we will use later on in the semester when we get to databases. But for right now, don't worry about it. So again, this is the only one you want. This is our program right here. I'm going to move this over a little bit. Now let's talk about what's on the screen right now so you get some kind of an idea. On the left-hand side here, and if yours doesn't look like it, I'll show you how to make it look like it in a minute. In fact, let's do this. I'm going to remove everything that's showing here. And I'm going to add it back in. So if yours looks like this, like that, and that's all you've got, let's talk about how to fix that. All right? The magic is you come up to the word View, and typically over here, you'll want your Toolbox. So you click Toolbox, and notice it's there. Now, it is not possible to open up the Toolbox when you are creating a console application like we're doing, because the Toolbox allows you to put tools on your screen. If you say, what are tools? We're going to do those in just a couple minutes. But for a console, you can leave this here, but it doesn't do anything. The other two things that we had over here were the Solution Explorer on the top and the Properties window on the bottom. Again, the magic is you click View, and about 3 down is Solution Explorer, and that brings that here. Then you click View again, and you go down near the very bottom to Properties window. And there they are. So that's how you bring them in, and if you do want to remove them so you've got more room on your screen, that's how you add them back. As I mentioned yesterday too, all of these windows are dockable. So I can click on Solution Explorer and drag it someplace. I don't recommend doing that, but you can. And I can go to the Properties window and do the same. Well, now this isn't where I want this stuff, so I can go and just drag it back. But when I drag it back, there it's docking. You can see that when it got blue, there, boom. Now, I don't even know what I did there, so I'm going to remove that. But I do want them to come back and be there and be back in their default locations. The easiest way to do that is to click on Tools, go about almost 3/4 of the way down, and go back to Import and Export Settings. So Tools, Import and Export Settings. You want to go down to the last icon here, the last radio button is what it's called, and choose Reset All Settings. And you click Next, and it says, do you want to save the settings you currently have? If you do want to save them, you can rename them. I don't, so I just go down to No, just reset everything. I click Next again, all right, and it says, which collections of settings do you need to reset to? Well, it should set to reset to C# by default, but to be sure, I can highlight C#. Visual C#, and then click Finish. And what you'll notice as soon as I click Close is, boom, everything's back to where it was. That's exactly what I want. So what I've shown you quickly is, number one, how you can go in and create a new project and a new solution. Number two, how you can go in and view if they're not showing your toolbar, or it's your toolbox actually, your toolbox, your Solution Explorer, which has a collection of all your files, and the Properties window. The Properties window means nothing in a console program. Later today, we will create what's called a GUI, a Graphical User Interface, or a Windows Forms program, and then this will all be filled in. All right? So, what do we have here? This is allowing us to come in here and use, hence the word using, a bunch of system files. All right, so these are a bunch of typically what are called library files, so it's a bunch of code that was written to help you. And you'll notice that if I look at this, it's all gray. And since it's all gray, what that means is none of it is being used in our program. So I could just highlight it and hit the delete key. Or I can highlight it, go up to the little light bulb here, click on it, and it says, you're not using anything, so remove it. And boom, it's gone. All right? So this is how we started yesterday. We came up and we had this. And the namespace is basically, this is where you do all your work, so to speak. The internal class, I said I'm not going to talk about until we get later on in the course because I don't want to confuse anyone. All right? Every C# program, whether it is a console program as we're working on right now, or if it's a GUI program like we'll work on later, has a main. That's the starting point for the program. There's only one main, and it's shared by everybody. When you have only one thing that's shared by the entire program, it's what's known as static. Now, we're going to start writing other routines other than main. Those routines can return something. Main returns nothing, so it is what is referred to as void of a return. All right? Its name is main, and it needs to have a capital M. It's created for us. If you run your program from the command line, so if I came out here and typed in CMD and ran my program from in here, I can pass things to it. That's each one of those things I pass is called an argument. And it's put inside of a string array, which is a collection of strings called args. We will not use that at all this semester. I'm just trying to go over everything that's in there for completeness sake. All right? And you'll notice that C#, like many other programming languages, is block structured. And blocks are delimited with curly braces. So this is the beginning of main. This is the end of main. If I wanted to delimit that and put comments in there so I knew that, I could come in here and I put in 2 forward slashes and I could put start. You don't have to do this, but I could say here start. So that would be a start for main. Move this over just a little bit. All right. And then I could come in here and put in end for main. You don't have to do that, but I'm showing you here how you can add comments. One way to add and comments are ignored by the system. They're put in there so you've got some internal program documentation. All right, another way that I can put that in is if I want to create a brand new line with a comment in it, so I'm just going to put this in here. This is a comment. Now you'll notice that when I did that, it didn't like what I was writing, and it's giving me a bunch of errors. But if I want to make this into a comment, I can just highlight it, go up near the top of my program. Wow, that's interesting. It's missing here. I've somehow lost one of my windows. So let's see, standard. All right. And up here, right under the word search, you'll see these things right here. And this says comment out whatever you've got highlighted. So if I click it, it comments it out. And you'll notice that that stuff goes away. If I go and click the one next to it, it uncomments it. All right? If I want to manually add comments, I already showed you, I can put in 2 forward slashes and then the rest of that line to the right of the 2 forward slashes, this is automatically considered a comment. Now, if I want to have a comment that stretches over multiple lines, I can either type all of it in, highlight all of it, and go up here like I just showed you, or I can put a slash at the beginning of every line, or I can start with a slash star, hit enter, and now I can put in, for example, multi-line, hit enter again, comment. And then the comment has to end with a slash star. So that's 3 different ways that I can provide comments for a program. And again, what comments do is they provide internal program documentation. So someone else, either you at a later time or someone else who ends up maintaining your program, can understand what you're trying to do. My litmus test, so to speak, as to whether or not I need to put in a comment is if I have to ask if a section needs a comment, it probably does. All right, so let's quickly put in just a 1 line of code here. All right, so we're going to come in here and we're going to type in system.console, and you'll notice when I'm doing this, this is what you see on your screen right now, this little box with blue in it and some words that are grayed out. This is called Intellisense. It's built into the software. I do want to do a system.console.writeLine, so I'm just going to hit my tab key. I'm going to hit it again, and boom, now I've got that in there for me. And I'm just going to put in here, this is, I think, what we did yesterday, hello C#. It's got to be inside of double quotes because this is a string. We'll talk about that more in just a couple minutes. And all executable C# lines must end with a semicolon. All right. Now, if I ran the program right now, it would work, but it would just show real quick in a screen and boom, it would disappear. I want it to stay on the screen so you can see it. So I'm now going to type system.console.readline, which is going to tell it to sit there and wait until I give it some input. So these are the 2 lines I put in. I want to write on the screen, hello C#, and then I want the cursor to go down to the next line and just sit there and wait for me to do something to continue. So I'm going to go up here. I always recommend you do either a file, save all, or as it says, there's a shortcut, Control-Shift-S. Or you can come up here and does it show it? All right, I don't have a lot of toolbar stuff showing here. There are a bunch more toolbars. How can I bring them in? I go up to an empty spot up here. I right mouse click and it shows me all of the available toolbars. You'll notice there's a build, there's a debug, and the only ones I have up are the standard one and the text editor. You might have more or less than that. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add my build one. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to add, well, I could put the formatting in there if I want to do that. I can come back up here and I can add the debug. So that's a way that I can add different stuff in here. Right. Do you have to do that? No. But I'm going to come in here and I'm again going to do a file, save all, And the way we magically run our programs, there's other ways of doing it, but the easiest way is to click this green arrow up here that says Start. So I'm going to click that, and again, it'll whiz around and it'll do a few things on its own here. And there's my program. Hello C#, so that was the write line. The read line is keeping it right here, and it's waiting for me to enter something. I'm just going to hit the Enter key, and boom, I'm back. So that's the first thing that we did yesterday. All right? Then we went in and said, okay, can we make this easier on ourselves? In other words, do we really have to write system.console. every time? The answer is no. All right? We can come up here and add one of these using statements that we looked at before. And that is, I can type in here using static system.console with a semicolon. And you'll notice nothing changed here, but now I can get rid of the system.console in front of these. And it still works just fine. To show you and prove that to you, File, Save All, run the program again, and there's my Hello C#, and bang, I'm back. Now, if you don't put that in, so let's remove it, you get errors. All right, they may not be showing right now. There they are. And it says it doesn't understand. So notice it says Show Potential Fixes right here. If I click on that, it'll say, hey, you should have a using system or something in here, and you don't have it. Well, in this case, if I just put in using system, it's not going to fix the problem. I still get the errors. But if I put in using system, now instead of having to say system.console.writeLine, notice how that fixed that error. Now, if I wanted to do it this way, I could just write console.writeLine. Well, to me, that's still too much work, so I always type in at the top of my console programs only using static system.console. Whoops. It is case sensitive. And once I put that in, now I don't need this, and it all works. All right? Now, we did this, and I did mention that the bad thing, so to speak, about running this is if we run this program right now the way it is, it always does the same thing. So we did go in, and the first thing we did so I could introduce variables to people is we wrote this program. All right? So I came in here and I typed in this, and I'll explain everything in just a moment. So string, first name, and I'm just going to set it equal to nothing, which is the empty string like that. So string, last name, and again, I'm going to set that equal to the empty string. And then I'm going to say double hours, and I'm going to set that equal to 0.0. Double rate, which will be how much money we make per hour, 0.0. And double gross. All right? Well, the problem with this is I'm not doing really anything with the program. So I said, well, why don't we give these values? So I'm going to come into these double quotes, and I'll put in my first name. I'll come in here, and I'll put in my last name. For hours, I'll say I work 40 hours. I'll say I make $25 an hour. And now I can say gross equals what gross equals, which is hours times rate. Now, I can run the program now. It'll work just fine. I won't get anything. These green things are warnings that are telling me that I created first name and last name, but I'm not using them. All right? Because I'm not printing them out anyplace. If I put my mouse here, it says the variable is assigned, but its value is never used. If I go to the potential fix, it'll say, do you want to remove it? And I don't. So, right now, if I ran the program, and I'll do that for you quickly, I'm going to have no output because I have not told it to output anything. So I can run this, and let's put a read line in here because if we don't, the program's just going to, boom, it's going to flash on the screen and then disappear. So if I run this, it works, but there's nothing there because I haven't told it to print out anything. So we came in here and we said, let's at least print out, our gross. So we said write line and I said gross, and that's a string, so it'll appear just like that, and I want to add or concatenate to that, so I use a plus sign, the gross, with a semicolon on the end. Now, if everything is hunky-dory, as it should be, now when I run it this time, it should say gross, colon, space, 1000. So, if I do a file, save all, and I run the program again, you'll notice that's exactly what it says. All right? So the problem with that is every time we run this, it's going to look exactly the same because these are all considered inputs. They're all variables. So I'll put a comment here that says, declare program variables. You don't need to put that in there, but I'm just doing it. So this is a string. A string is just a collection of characters. All right? First name is the name I gave to this string. Jeff is the value I initialized first name to. If I don't give it any value whatsoever, so if I were to just do this, it has no value. Its value is null because there is no value. But I gave it a value because later I want to print all this stuff out. All right? And that's what we'll do in just a moment. All right. So right now everything's working, everything's cool, but like I said, the problem with this is the output is always the same. Now I can come up here with another variable and I can call it whatever I want. So I'm going to make another variable here that I'm going to call output. And again, I'll set it equal now to nothing. All right, why am I doing that? I want to show you why I'm doing that right now. Let me move this up a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to say output equals, and I'm going to say in here first name plus a blank space, and notice that's what I want, a blank space plus last name. There's my Intellisense kicking in, so I'm going to hit tab, and boom. Now I've got output equals first name plus last name. So if I change this right line, and now I come in here and I do a right line of output, all right, so I just changed that, notice what happens. Now it's got my first name and my last name. Good. That's what I want. All right. I can even, if I want to do so, I can add to the beginning of this, and put in something like name, and then another plus sign here. Now it'll say name space Jeff Scott. Now, I don't only want that. I do not only want that. I also want to print out the hours. I want to print out the rate, and I want to print out the gross. I could do that as a series of these right line statements, or I could combine them together, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So I've got output equals here. Now if I come in here and say something like this, output equals hours plus hours, I'm not going to run it, but if I did, it goes and it overwrites what we did here with this. So it'll just say hours 40. Well, that's silly. I don't want that. I want to add this, and then I want to add this to that. So instead of saying here output equals, I say output plus equals, which means I want to concatenate these two things together. Just to prove that to you, again, I'll do a save all, and I'll run the program again. And there it is. Now, the problem is they're on the same line. I don't want them on the same line. So I can come to the beginning of this next line, or I can do it at the end of this line. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in \n. Don't use a forward slash. Use a backslash, which it should be right above your enter key on your keyboard. That means do the equivalent of hitting enter before you do this. So now notice the difference. I'm going to do another file, save all. I'm going to run the program again. And now I've got hours, your name, and hours. So I'm going to continue on with this. And now I'm going to say output plus equals, and I'm going to say \n rate with a plus, and I want to put in my rate. Finally, I'll say output plus equals \n gross plus gross. All right. And it looks like I have no errors. Nothing is showing. So again, I'll do a file, save all. I'll run the program again. And there's all my outputs. Now, it doesn't look fantastic or anything. And I want to change hours so it says 40.00. I want the rate to change so it's $25.00. And I want the gross to change so that it's $1,000.00. So I want to show you how to do that. All right. So for hours, which I only want in here, the .00 on the end, I'm going to say hours dot toString. All right. And right now that hasn't changed anything. But notice hours was put in here, and hours is put in there as a double variable, which is a numeric variable which can hold a decimal place. Same with rate, same with gross. So I want to come in here and I want to tell it to be a number field, N, and I want it to have 2 decimal places. So N2. Again, if I come in and do a file, save all, and run this, you'll notice that now there's 40.00. So let's fix the other 2. The fix for the other 2 is done the same way, except that now instead of saying dot toString and putting in there N2, I want this in currency format, so I just put a C in there. Just like that. And I'm just going to copy this, make it a little faster. So I'm saving. Now if I come in here and again do another file, save all, and run it, now it's looking exactly the way I want it to look. All right, again, it's not perfect as far as how things are lined up. I'm not concerned with that right now. All right, but it's got a heading for each field. It concatenated or combined together my first name and last name fields. It's got separate entities for the hours, which we set, the rate, which we set, the gross, which we calculated, and all of them have been formatted as well. The only problem with this program in its current form, the only problem with it is I get the same output every time I run it. And I don't necessarily want that. So what I'm going to do is one more file, save all, and I'm going to grab everything that I put inside of main, all this stuff, and I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard. You can Control C, you can do an edit copy, you can right mouse click and choose copy. I'm just going to do a Control C. All right, why? Because I'm going to create another program in here real quick. We'll take a break at about 9 o'clock. So right now I only have this project in here, Payroll 01, and I'm sorry, I can't make this window any bigger. All right, but I want to single click on where it says Solution Payroll C#. Single click on it, then right mouse click on it, and choose Add, New Project. And it says, what do you want? Again, my console app for .NET Framework is not in here. So I come up to here and I type in console. And console app .NET Framework, there it is. And it says, what do you want to call this? Well, I have a Payroll 01, so I'll make this Payroll 02. It already knows where to save it. You shouldn't have to change this. And the framework is set, so I just click Create. And now I've got my new one. There it is. And if I come in here and paste that in, now it's an exact duplicate except for one thing. Notice these aren't working again. Why? Well, we've got these things which we said we don't need, and we can replace those with using static system.console. Once I put that in, those errors are gone, and if I ran it, it would look exactly the same, except for one thing. All right, if I ran it right now and I do a file save, it's not going to run this program. It thinks the program I'm supposed to run is this one, the original one, Payroll 01. So what I do is I come over to Payroll 02, I left mouse click on it once, then I right mouse click on it and I choose Set as Startup Project. Just so we're sure we're running this one, I'll put in here my full name, so Jeffrey Scott. So I'm going to save this with a file save all, and I'm going to run it again. And you'll notice it now says Jeffrey Scott. All right? So we've got that, and that's good. All right? But the problem is, again, every time we run this program, it's going to give the same output, and I don't want that. So I'm going to fix that right now. I'm going to set my first name to the empty string, my last name to the empty string, this output thing to the empty string, hours to 0, rate to 0, and even gross I'll set to 0. Oops, that should be 0.00 and 0. You don't even have to. It's totally fine to just set these to 0 instead of 0.00 like I'm doing. Plus, you can see they're not exactly lined up. If you want to do that, you can hit Tab after you put the stuff in. If you want to make it look like little soldiers, and I mentioned this yesterday, boom. Now, if I run the program now, there won't be, after name, it'll be empty because we haven't given it a value. So it'll be empty, empty. Hours will say 0.00. Rate will say 0.00. And gross will say 0.00. Well, I don't want that. So in between these two things, this stuff is now fine. This is fine, and this is fine. So I want to come in here, and I want to input my values. So I'm going to put a comment here that says input first name. All right? And I'm going to say here first name equals read line. All right? Just that. So let's see what that did, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. So I've got first name equal read line. I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run this. All right? And why didn't it ask me? Oh, I know why. Because I didn't ask it to ask me. All right? So right now, I could come in here. You'll notice that when I ran it, let me stop the run and start the run again. It is actually waiting. So I can put in Jeff. It's hard for you to see, but it is there, and hit enter. And now it has Jeff for the first name. It has the hours, it has the rate, it has the gross. The problem is, even though that worked, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So, before we saw this write line statement, but I'm going to put in here a write statement, which tells the cursor to stay on the same line. And I'm going to say, please enter first name. Whoop. And I'm going to put a blank space here with a semicolon on the end. And I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run the program again. And now notice it says, please enter first name. I put in Jeff, hit enter, and there's my stuff. All right? So I'm going to quickly make copies of this. And now I'm going to input my last name. All right? Make sure if you do that, you change every instance of first name to last name. Otherwise, you're just going to overwrite the original first name. All right, so now I've got my first name and my last name. The problem is with these two fields right here. Because if I come in here and do this, so if I come in here and say input hours worked, and I say please enter hours worked, and I say hours equal read line, I'm going to get an error. It'll come eventually. There it is. And what it is read line expects that the variable that you're entering is of type string. And hours is of type double. So what I have to do is literally convert this to a double. How do I do that? I come in here and type in convert dot to double read line. Just like that. Well, unless I made a mistake. So I thought, oh, it's convert, what is it? I saved it just in case I forgot what it was, which I did. Convert dot to double. That's what it should be. Oh, I spelled double wrong. How's that? There you go. So now, and it should, the error should go away, but let's see. Convert dot to double. The name convert does not exist. Okay, what's the problem? Well, remember those things that we removed before? One of the ones that we removed was using system. So once I add that using system back again, boom, my error is gone. So now I'm going to copy this. Whoops, sorry. And I'm going to say input hourly rate here and here. Now I've got all of my fields. Now I can come back and say gross equals hours times rate. Now notice, and I'm going to do my file save as, or save all I should say, run the program, and now it should ask me for everything. So if I do leave it blank, it'll take it because strings can be blank. But if I leave this blank, the program's going to blow up. It's blowing up right now. And it's telling me, if I put my mouse there, that basically the input string was not in the correct format. Why? Because toDouble was attempting to grab something that was a number but was inputted as a string and convert it. It can't convert a blank. The same thing would happen if I clicked, if I ran it again just to show you. So I'll run it again, but instead of putting that in, instead of leaving it blank, so Jeff Scott, I'll put in hello and hit enter. The same thing happened. I get an error and it says input string was not in the correct format. That is all part of a process that's referred to as data validation. You're going to learn to do that later, all right, in the semester. But if I do run this now with all of this stuff in there, and I come in and run it, and let's put in something different. So Sally Jones, let's say that Sally worked 50 hours and she makes $30 an hour. All right, well, what's wrong? Something is. The hours is working, the rate's not, and the gross isn't. So let's fix that. All right. So there I never changed that to rate. See that? Right there. That should have been rate. Since I didn't change it, it was set to 0. All right? And since this said hours, it reset hours from 50 that I set originally to 30. Hours, basically rate was never set, so it took the 30 times 0, and that's why it gave me all those 0 for all those numbers. Let's run it again. Should be correct now. Sally Smith, 50, 30, and boom, we've got all of our information. Now, you might ask something like, well, what about overtime, etc.? We're going to handle all that stuff later. All right? But what I just did, and I'm sorry I went over by a couple minutes. I'm going to give you a 10-minute break in just a couple moments. All right? But what I just did then was I created 2 iterations of a payroll program. With the first iteration that we created, we hard-coded in the values. The problem with that was every time we ran the program, since we had the exact same inputs every time, we had the exact same outputs every time. The only processing we're doing in this program is that line right there. So then we came back in, and let me close this. We don't need it anymore. And we said, hey, let's make this program a little more user-friendly. So we came in and again declared our inputs, but initialized all of them to basically nothing or 0. Then we gave the user the opportunity to input their first name, to input their last name, to input their hours worked, to input their hourly rate, and then we did the same processing we did before, and we did the same output that we did before. So that was it in a nutshell, real quickly. All right? Now, again, I will save what I worked on today, and I sent that to you yesterday. I'll send it to you again today. One last thing before we take our break, and that is this. After the break, I'm going to ask that you try to do something. You're not turning it in. It's not graded. I can't see it. If you say, well, I don't want to, then you're not going to. But the best way to learn this stuff is to sit and practice it. So I've made a little thing here that what I want you to do is to create a new console program. You can create it right in your payroll one, all right, and call it Taxes Console. I'll even do that with you so you can see it. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to close this. All right, I'm again going to click on my solution. I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose Add, New Project. I'm going to come up to here, and again, in my search box, type in console, choose console app.NET Framework, C#, click next, and this one I said to call taxes console, and click create. And if you do all that and you have this, it worked. So that's the first thing I want you to do, even though I listed it here on step 5. Then in there, I want you to create these variables. A string for the first name. Remember, you cannot put blank spaces in there. A string for the last name. A string for whatever item somebody bought. A double for the tax rate, and a double for the price. You'll also have to create a variable called subtotal, and one called tax total, and one called final total. And then basically, so let's say that you run the program and it says, enter your first name. So enter first name. So you come in there and let's say I put in Jeff. Enter last name. And I come in there and put in Scott. And it says enter item bought. And I put in laptop. I'm making all this up. And then it says enter price. And I put in here, I don't know, $2,000. So 2,000, just like that. And then it says enter tax rate. And to keep it simple, I'll put in here 0.1, which is 10%. All right? Then what the program should do is it should come back and give us this. Something like name, Jeff Scott. Item, laptop. Price, $2,000. Tax rate, I might have to put another tab in here just so it looks nice. You can play with that. It's no big thing. And we'll actually put in here 10%. All right. Subtotal, which was the price. All right, right there. It's repeating it, but I'm just getting you used to working with this stuff. And then tax total. So 10% of 2,000 would be what? $200. And then final total. All right, let's just say final tot here. But again, I can put another tab in here. I just want it to look halfway decent. All right, and this should say $2,200. Now, I'm asking this question. You only have to answer if it's in the negative. Is there anything I just asked you to do right there that does not make sense to you? And if you say, I don't know how to do that 10%, I'm going to do the program for you. I want to give you a 10-minute break now, and after the break, what I want to do is give you about 10 more minutes to try to work on this. And then I will do it for you in front of the class. Does that make sense to everyone?
Absolutely.
Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, so I'm going to grab this right here, and I'm going to remove it. You can make the inputs look any way you want, but I'm going to leave this up there. I'm going to do one last thing, and that's what I started doing yesterday, and that is I'm going to start up a timer right here. So I'm just going to say in here, 10-minute timer. I did it yesterday too. And I'm going to start it so your break begins right now. All right? And I will keep this up there. I will just shrink this way down and play with it until you can see all of it. There you can. And why did it stop? I don't know. Guess it's making it restart. All right, so there it is. I will start up again with you. You've got a break from 9:10 to 9:20. From 9:20 to 9:30, I'd like you to try to work on this. And at 9:30, I will go over my solution, which I will write for you right in front of you. I have nothing here that I've created, so I will do it right in front of you. All right, see you at 9:30. Michael, I thought I heard your voice. Were you able to get in? Hopefully you are, and you're just taking your break.
Hey, Mr. Scott, I heard you from down the hallway there.
Okay. Okay, you got in.
Yeah, I did get in just fine.
That's what I'm concerned with.
I had to free up some disk space.
All right. So, sorry, I forgot to turn this back on again, so let me quickly go back to what I've done so far, and that is this. I came in, and I declared my variables here. String, the first name, the last name, and the item are all strings. So I initialized all three of those to the empty string. Tax rate, price, tax total, and final total are all doubles. Well, I'm going to change that right now. I'm going to make it these, instead of doubles, I'm going to make these decimals. All right, it's going to result in errors here, but I'll fix that in just a second. And why am I doing that? Because when you are working with monetary amounts, it is recommended that you use decimal. It's not that you have to. The program will work fine whether you use decimal or double, but why not use the recommended data type? So you can either put a small m there, which is going to fix all those, that means decimal, or you could put a large m there as well. Either one of those would work. I'm just going to use small m's. All right, so that's all done. Everything's back to the way it was. But now when I come in here again, it doesn't like this. So I have to say convert dot to decimal. Yesterday when we did this, we did a convert dot to double. This is a convert dot to decimal. I'm getting the error again because one of the things I removed up here before was using, oh boy, system. Once I put that back in, you'll notice that immediately it's not gray because that's down here. Now my error is gone. All right, so what else is left? I did the purchase price and I will need the tax rate. And what did I call that? I called the tax rate. Okay. Now, just so you know, too, notice the order. First name, last name, item bought, purchase price, tax rate. First name, last name, well, they're not exactly the same. I could go and remove, just move this down, but you can put them in any order you want. It doesn't really matter. All right. Now, what I have to figure out is the tax total, and I have to figure out the final total. All right. So this was inputting these 5 values. That looks pretty good as far as I can tell. Now, before I do this, because it's always a good idea when you write some code, rather than writing everything, write some code and then test it. All right? So I'm just going to save this by doing a file save all. I'm not going to output anything yet, and that's okay. I just want to see if it looks like it's working. So enter first name Jeff, last name Scott. Hours worked. Well, it's still running the old program. So there's a problem. So I have to come over here to my taxes console. I can have it open, it doesn't hurt. Right mouse click on it and choose set as startup project. And then let's run it again. So enter first name Jeff, enter last name Scott, enter item bought. We said before it'd be a laptop. Enter purchase price. 2,000. Don't put the $ or decimals in here unless it would be like $2,000.53 or something. And the tax rate 0.1. Boom. Okay? Now, I don't get any output because I did not ask for any output. But to try to make my life a little bit easier, I don't know if it will or not, but I'm going to try this to see if it does. And that is I'm going to go back to my Payroll 2 program just so you don't see me typing a lot. And I'm going to grab all of this. Okay. Now I don't have a variable currently that is called output, so I'm going to make one right here. Now what I like to do, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to put it up here because I like to keep my variables of the same type together. Again, there's nothing that says you have to do that. The reason I like to do that is it makes it real easy for me to see if I've forgotten to put something in. All right. Again, that's just my way of doing things. I'm not, by no means am I saying, hey, you got to do it that way. One of the things that you're establishing right now is your own style, and I like that. That's the way that it should be. All right. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to get rid of that read line and replace it with all this. So output equals. This will work, name equal first name plus last name, but then the next thing I want will be the item, and then I'll want the price. So this will say item. All right, and this will be item, and it is a string, so I don't have to do any formatting of it. All right, and the next one was price. I haven't done my calculations yet. Don't worry about it. I'll do them in a minute. And this will be price.toString. Okay, that's good. And this will be, well, there's no gross anymore. This will be tax rate. Now, I wanted it to say 10%. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to come in here and say tax rate. And the type I'm going to put in here as a P for percentage. All right, so I'll have all that. And what else? There's a couple more things I want to put in here. And I want to put tax total, which we haven't configured yet. And that'll be tax total. And that'll be formatted as a currency. And then final total. And that'll be final total. And again, as currency. All right. Let me make this a little bit smaller so it all fits on the screen. And I'm a little anal about some of this stuff, so I'm just going to try to line some stuff up a little bit just because it'll make it easier for me to see what's going on. There. That's all I'm going to do. Now, what's left, I have asked for the purchase price and I've asked for the tax rate. Good. But now I've got to configure or figure out the tax total and the final total. Well, we already got the formulas because I put them up here. All right, the tax total is the subtotal, which was our price times the tax rate. All right, so I'll put a comment in here that says calculate tax total, and it'll say tax total equals, and what is it? Well, again, it is the price times, and notice even the Intellisense is kicking in here, times the tax rate. That's good. Then I will calculate the final total. And the final total is just equal to, whoops, well, notice it even said it's got something in there for me. I can use some of this. It's not the tax total times the tax rate. Nope, it's the tax total plus the price. We'll see right now whether or not I did it correctly. Now, this isn't going to probably look real nice. It's not going to really line up. I could come in here and put some tabs and stuff to pretty it up, but that's not really a big thing. So I'm gonna do this, do a file, save all, and I'll put in just what I showed you before. And that is this. For the first name, I'll put in mine. The last name, the item bought, I said was a laptop. The purchase price was $2,000. The tax rate was 10%. And you'll see what I've got. All right, it looks, as far as I can tell, like everything worked. Again, it's not spaced out fantastically, all right, but that's okay. I can go back and fix that later if I want to do so. The only thing I'm going to do here is, to me, after I input everything, my outputs right here, I want those to be on a new, fresh screen. So before I do the output right here, I'm going to type in clear, which is short for console.clear, all right. So I just added that down here. You don't have to do that. To me, it's just going to look a little nicer. So now I've segregated my inputs and my outputs. So I'm going to save file, do a file save all, and run it one last time. And put in the same, we'll put in something different. Mary Smith, let's say that she bought, I don't know, a desk. And we'll say that it was $100. And we'll say that her tax rate was 0.075, 7.5%. The screen clears, there it is. All right, and it appears to work just fine. Now, hopefully doing that, hopefully it made some sense. Again, I'll give you a copy of this later, but what I added here, these were my using statements. I put the static system.console, so I didn't have to write system.console dot, and I put the system in because that's where it defines how to use the convert methods. All right. Then inside of main, I created my variables. First name, last name, item, and output are all strings. They all hold non-numeric values. So I initialized all of those, there's those first four, to what's referred to as the empty string. Double quote, double quote. I could have also set them equal to null, which means unknown. The last four that are in here, the price, the tax rate, the tax total, and the final total, I made decimal. Again, double would have worked, but I made them decimal because I am working with dollars and cents here. All right, you oftentimes use decimal for that, or anytime you are working with, sometimes, you might even use it with other things, but it's usually used for when you're working with dollars and cents. So these were declaring my input variables and initializing them. Remember, right here, just if I put in this with a semicolon, that's declaring the variable. Then to say this, that's initializing the variable. You can do it as two different lines. So I could have put on one line string first name and then a semicolon. And then on a later line, I could have put in first name equals double quote, double quote. And you might say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, I might want to declare the variable, but then for the value, I might ask the user to input something. So I might put it in later. All right? All right. So then we inputted our stuff. We told you to enter your first name, and since it was just a string, the first three, since they were just strings, all we needed in there were read lines. So for the first name, the last name, and in fact, I'll even move that up here. I don't have to, but I'm going to move the item up here. So I inputted the strings first, which were first name, last name, and item. They're all done the same way. Make sure if you do this and you do it once and then you copy it, that you would change first name to last name here and here, and you would change first name to item or item bought like I did here and here. All right? Then we went in and did our other three variables. These were our variables that were our other two variables, I guess. How many were there? These two. All right? These two here. The price and the tax rate. Those were the other things that we had to read in. But since those variables are both of type decimal, we have to convert them over whatever we read in. Remember, read line says whatever we put in here, read it in as a string. This says take that string and convert it to a decimal. Now, I could run it again to prove this to you, but you've seen me do this before, and that is, if I leave it blank or I put in a non-numeric value, the program's going to blow up. If I do it here, or if I do it here. All right, I don't think I have to show you that again because I already have. All right, so then we read in the purchase price and convert it to a double, read in the tax rate and convert it to a double. Then we do our calculations. Our first calculation is for the taxable total, which was our price, like $2,000 for a laptop, times the tax rate, which was like 10%. All right, and if you do that, if I'd put a 10 in there, then rather than thinking it was the tax rate was 10%, it would have thought it was 1,000%. So I used the decimal in there. All right, and then we calculated the final total as the taxable total, which we just calculated, plus the original price. Then we outputted our information. Here we're creating all of it, sticking it into the same variable. Then we cleared our screen. Then on the screen, we outputted that value, and we put a read line in there. If you weren't here yesterday and didn't see that, I'll show you quickly why I've got the read line in there. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run the program. And, well, now it's working. Yesterday it flashed on the screen, and it didn't work. If I don't need the read line, there's no reason to put it in there. But I'll just keep it in. It's not going to hurt anything one way or the other. So notice if I put in nothing, if I put in nothing and nothing, now it'll break when I put in that. And again, it's telling me input string was not in the correct format. It tried to convert the empty string to a decimal value, which doesn't work. The program blew up. If you get this, your program's still running. You're in run mode right now, but actually you're in break mode because you had an error. You click up here on this red square, and that stops the program run. All right? All right. Now, I'm just going to ask this very quickly, and that is there anything that I put in here? You will get a or an electronic copy of this later. Is there anything that I put in here that anyone needs any further explanation on? This is your time to ask. All right, since I'm not hearing anything, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot for 10 minutes here to go back and review the PowerPoints for Chapter 1 and the actual book stuff for Chapter 1 from yesterday. This is the only time I plan on doing this. Then we'll jump into Chapter 2. By the end of the day today, what I will want to do is write 2 more programs for you with you. And that is, I'll take that last payroll program we wrote and rewrite it as a GUI or graphical user interface program. And I'll take this program we're looking at now and also rewrite that as a GUI, graphical interface program. So I want to do both of those, plus go over the Chapter 2 material before the end of the period. And then to end up, I'll quickly look with you at your homework for Chapter 2 and your labs for Chapter 2. We will do at least one of those as a class, maybe even tomorrow already, just so you get into the swing of how to do things. All right? Okay. So, jumping in, and like I said, I'm not going to spend much time on this. If you're thinking, yeah, you didn't spend hardly any time on it, then go back and watch the presentation yesterday. All right? So this was how to get started with Visual Studio. What Muroc books do is they give you a list of objectives, applied objectives, and knowledge objectives. I don't like to read to you, so you can read those on your own. All right? This is an example here of a GUI or graphical user interface application. By the time we get done, either today or tomorrow, you could create this, except you'd probably have problems with the stuff on top because we don't talk about that for a little bit yet. But you'll know that these are labels, these are text boxes, and these are buttons. We'll go over that in just a bit. All right. The 3 platforms, all we care about is Winforms, because that's what we're using. So we don't need the Windows presentation framework or the universal Windows platform. That's why if you did download those yesterday, all right, WPF or UWP, we really don't need those. It's not going to hurt anything to have them. What I said yesterday, I'm going to repeat it now. I'm hoping by the end of the semester, we're able to do at least an ASP.NET web form program and maybe even a core MVC program. If we do that, it's not in your book. I would never test you on anything like that. I would never give you homework on anything like that. We just might spend a period on one or on both of these so you've got an example of what they look like. That's all. All right. Now, again, our book is a couple years old, so we're using Visual Studio 2022 Community Edition. That's the latest and greatest. And we're using the C# programming language. When I first started teaching this material, C# wasn't even a well-known language. Everybody was using Visual Basic.NET. All right? But now hardly anybody is. C# has taken over. And I believe the main reason for that is if I had a person here from Microsoft, they would disagree with what I'm about to say. Okay, I'm just telling you that right now. But basically, what this is, what C# is it's Microsoft's answer to the Java programming language. Not JavaScript, but Java. All right, they disagree and say, no, it's not the same. Yes, it is. All right, we looked at this yesterday, and if you look up here as this being you on your computer, and this being the operating system of the computer, then the stuff that's here is what's in between. So that's the .NET framework. That's what we're using. You are creating .NET applications using C#, also called Visual C#. So you are doing some of this stuff. And the Visual Studio program is what communicates with your operating system. If you understand that, even a little bit, that's totally fine. All right, showed you this before, but just again, to review, when we go in and start to create an actual GUI app, we will see our toolbox over here. This is called our form designer area. Down here, even though there's nothing there, all right, that's our error window. It's also our debug window. This is our Solution Explorer, and I removed that before for you and put it back. And this right here is our Properties window. All right. We have done almost nothing. We've done nothing with the Toolbox, a little bit with the Solution Explorer, and nothing with the Properties window thus far. The reason we've done nothing with those is because we've been using console apps, and console apps don't use the Toolbox. Console apps don't use the Properties window, not directly at least. All right. When we ran our program, so when we click that green arrow, remember, the only thing that a computer can understand is what's referred to as the computer's machine language. That was the first programming language, and that's a series of zeros and ones that have specific meaning. So what has to happen is you key in your program in C#. That's what we're doing. Then we compile the program when we click that green arrow. So before it runs, it has to go through the compilation process. And this is the stuff internally that's happening in here. It's converting those English-like statements that we're writing to the zeros and ones the computer can understand. All right? Okay. So when we started it up, this is pretty much what you saw. Yours, again, might have been empty if it was nothing there to begin with. And we click Create a New Project. All right? I showed this yesterday to be complete. I want to show it to you again today, and that is this. I'm going to grab what we've got open here. I'm going to do one last file, save all, and I'm going to close it. And I want to show you 3 different ways of opening up what we just did. The first way is to restart Visual Studio. All right, so there's my Visual Studio. I want to pin it to the taskbar. There it is. So I'm going to click there, and you'll notice that once it comes up, there's my Payroll C#. That's the last one I just did. So if I click there, boom, that's one way to bring my program up. To me, that's the easiest way. All right, do you have to do it that way? No. Show you quickly another way. So I'm going to close this. And if I double click on the folder, there's a file in here called payrollc#.sln. That's that solution file that we created that has these inside of it. So I can double click on that as well. And again, it brings it back up again. All right, so either one of those ways would work. All right. Oops, try that again. There we go. All right, so let's just continue on here. If you want more about what a project file is and what a solution file is, you can read the slides. All right, I just showed you how to open it. Closing it, actually, for me, closing it like this, just clicking that X is not really the best idea. And what should happen is if either you've got files you haven't saved or Visual Studio thinks some of its system files have not been saved, it'll prompt you to save first. The best way to really exit this is to do a file, do a save all, and then just come in and do a file, exit. That is the cleanest way to do it. All right? And that should make sure that nothing is broken, so to speak. All right? Or you forget to save something that you should have saved. All right. Let me check real quick. All right, I'm just wanting to make sure that I've got a bunch of emails, as you can see, coming through here, that none of them were from you. One was, but Michael and I have already spoken. So, let's finish up these PowerPoints quickly. So that's the Form Designer. We're going to be working with that after our next break. All right? When you do this, when you work in the Form Designer, you're going to have a file that's called something like form1.cs. And then that file will hold your GUI and it'll hold your code, basically. You'll see what I mean in just a few minutes. So here's the Solution Explorer. I already mentioned that other than, for example, frmmain.cs, other than a few of these files, that are ones that are down here, you shouldn't go monkeying with these files. These are system files. All right? You want to know more about these and what that partial means, etc. Some of that stuff we talked about earlier, you can read that. I want to give it to you later because I'm trying not to snow you over with too many details. So that's why I'm skipping that stuff. I already showed you that these windows are dockable. I showed you how to move them. I showed you how to reset them, again, back to their, to their original value, and that's in here as well. The project properties window, don't ever worry about that. It's a system file. You shouldn't have to monkey with it at all. We're using, I believe, C# 11.0. All right, so don't worry about that either. All right, this was a program that they had you build. All right, and they talked about how to run it. Well, we've already looked at that. So that's chapter 1 stuff. One quick thing before we do this, and we will talk about this. If you don't see it today, I guarantee we'll work with it tomorrow. All right, so if you had any problems with GitHub, all right, what you should be able to do, I'm hoping, even if you don't have a GitHub account, so even if you couldn't make it, you had problems with it, hopefully you can all do this, and that is you can go out to github.com/jpscottrankin. That's my GitHub. You'll notice I have these repositories. I've got 82 of them. Well, that's way too many. I should be cleaning that up. But if I click on where it says repositories, you'll notice that the fourth one down for me is AWD. That's for this class. All right, so you should be able to click on this, and it'll bring this up. This has got all the homework files. It's got all the lab files. It's got the PowerPoint slides. It's got the stuff from the book, and it's got the written tests. Now, so how do you get that? There's different ways, but the easiest way is to click code and then click the download zip, and it'll save it to wherever your downloads folder is. As a zip file, then you should be able to right mouse click on it and unzip it. That will give you access then to all of the chapter, all of the books, labs, homeworks, written tests, etc. All that stuff should be out there. All right, so with that said, I've got a product that I mentioned yesterday to the class that's called Red Shelf. What that does is they basically allow me to have a copy of the PDF for the book. That's what I've got right here. All right, so I'm very quickly going to jump and go through chapter 1. And when I say quickly, I mean very quickly because most of it's the same stuff we already have and we've already gone over. So again, we're using Windows Forms applications. Don't worry about the other two here. If we have time, we'll go through ASP.NET Web Forms and Core MVC. Real quickly, what's the difference between a Windows form and an ASP.NET form? A Windows form runs on your desktop. An ASP.NET form runs in your browser. All right? And Core MVC is what you can use to write, either simple web forms or advanced applications. All right. Again, we're working with a community edition, but we're not using 2019, we're using 2022, and we're working with C#. The way that Muroc books work, just so you know, the left-hand side, all right, so the even number pages are always all text. The right-hand side will either be code or pictures or examples of the stuff they just talked about on the left-hand side. This picture I already went over previously. The IDE, I'm going to skip that because there's a better picture that's coming up in a few slides. I talked to you about the compilation process. I showed you how to start up Visual Studio. I showed you different ways that you could open up Visual Studio. And this was the picture. So this is the stuff we're working with. Up here is your menu. Down below your menu is your toolbar. On the left-hand side, on the left-hand side is your toolbox. So toolbar, toolbox. This is your form designer. Underneath it, there's nothing there right now. Now, rather, will be your debug window and your error window. This is your Solution Explorer, and this is your Properties window. All right, and again, we've gone over, if you want a more detailed explanation, you can look in here or read your book. I do want to mention, I should say this, and Michael and Donald and Mason, you probably heard this last semester, but if you were to come up to me at the end of the semester and say, you know what, I bought the book and I never even opened it. That doesn't make me proud. You can say, oh, your lectures were so good. No, they weren't. All right? There are things in this book that the book is, several hundred pages long. There are things in this book that there's not the time to go over. So I'm supplementing what's in the book. I'm giving you what I consider to be the most important stuff. All right? But, especially when you're working on like the written tests and stuff, you may have to go through the book to get the answers. All right. So I showed you the GUI. This is the code that's behind the GUI that makes the GUI go. You're going to see that in just a few minutes. All right. There's more on the Solution Explorer if you want more and a more detailed explanation. There's more on the other windows. And again, you can see they made it float here. We talked about that already and rearranged, so we've gone over that already. How to change the .NET version? We don't have to, so I'm not even going to hit that. How to test? Well, you know that the easiest way is to click that green arrow. I believe, let me see if I'm right or wrong, that rather than clicking that green arrow, I think you can also, on your function keys that are at the top of your keyboard, you've got F1 through F12. I believe if you hit F5, nope. Well, yours probably will. Mine won't do it because of the software that I'm using, but I think it's F5. It might be Control F5 or Alt F5. To me, the easiest way to run it is to just click that Start button. But there are other ways of doing it too. I think you can go into, doesn't even show it up here. There used to be a Run option or Build. I don't know. All right. As long as you just do that, you should be fine. And I'll tell you what, whatever I didn't tell you is right in here anyway. All right, but remember, in this book, they're going through Visual Studio 2019. So it may look a little bit different in 2022. There is no book that they have out there yet, at least the ones that we use for 2022. All right. All these exercises at the end of the chapters, you've got the solution starts and the actual solutions. You've got all of them. All right, that's part of what I downloaded for you, and it's in that information I talked about earlier. Let's quickly go over the PowerPoints for Chapter 2, then we'll take a break, and then we will come back and go over Chapter 2, all right, the actual stuff that's in the book. Then we're going to go back and rebuild those two projects. All right. So this is how to design a Windows Forms application. Notice we have fewer objectives and fewer applied and knowledgeable objectives. This option dialog box, you should never have to touch this. I don't know why they even showed this. I showed you let me say why you might want to use this. All right? This is under the Tools options. If you go down to locations there and you set this to your desktop, the project location, if all of these are set correctly, then you should never be asked. It should automatically save to your desktop every time. So you might want to do that, I guess. All right. The Create New Project window, I already showed you this. And I showed you that with what we're doing, it doesn't come up with the .NET framework or the .NET like these show. So we have to search for it. All right. Configuring it, your new project, I already told you about the project name versus the location versus the solution. So we did this already. All right. We're going to start creating this kind of stuff in just a moment. All right. In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to grab the program that he's got right here, and I will create it, not this moment, but when we go back to the book, as opposed to the PowerPoints, I will create this exact program. So you can see it, and I'll try to do it nice and slow. All right. These things over here are labels. They're kind of like headings, for lack of better words. These are text boxes. You'll notice that the only text box that's white is the subtotal, and the other ones are grayed out. That means that for those three text boxes, we went into the Properties window that you saw earlier, and there's a property called Read Only. we set it to true, which means those are read-only text boxes, and that's why they're gray. And as you'd guess, these two things are buttons. If we click the calculate, if we put in 225 and we click calculate, we get all this other stuff. If we click exit, the program exits. I'm going to show you a better way of exiting than the way they show it in the book. And what I mean is, in the book, they're just going to put a close statement in there. So when you click exit, your program quits. I'm going to give you the ability to ask the user, are you sure you want to quit the program? All right, and we'll go over that after the break. So this is what our form will originally look like, and we want to turn it into this. So it'll look like this, and it'll have one more button on it, but we'll make it look like this. I'll go over that very slowly, and if you have questions, I highly encourage you to ask them. All right? So 3 ways to add a control to a form. All right? And I just use 2 of them. One of them is I either double click on so if I want a button here, if I double click on it, it's going to put it way in the upper left-hand corner. The easiest way to add a control to a form is the way I use virtually 100% of the time. So I'll click with my left mouse button on button. I'll drag it right here and boom, it'll put a button right there. That's the easiest way to do it. All right? So you can read this otherwise. And how do you work with a control? Well, what you don't want to do is double click it. If you double click a control, you'll open up the code window for that control. I'm going to show you that because you're going to do it eventually. I do it. Everybody does it. And it's going to lead to some things you don't want to have happen yet. So I'll show you how to fix it after the break. So again, ways to add a control, yeah. How to select and work with controls. We're going to go over all this. It'll make more sense when you see it in action. All right, we'll go over all of this stuff. All right, so here's the form after they went in and added actual text for the labels, and after they made these read-only, and after they put text in there for the buttons. All right, so we're going to go through all of that stuff. To do that, it says here the name property. This is not the name property you're seeing here. This is the text property. The name property is the way you want to refer to a control in your code. So when I build this, I always do this in a very deliberate way. I create or paint my GUI, my graphical user interface. Once I've got the interface looking pretty much the way I want, I name my controls. Then I go in and, play with the text and start double-clicking things to add code. You'll see what I mean after the break. So the name property is how you identify with something in code. And as they recommend, and we're going to use this process also. Our form we will rename with an FRM. Our buttons will start with BTN. Our labels with LBL. Our text boxes with TXT. The text is what goes in there. So it's what's shown inside of here. Or it's what this says. Or it's what's shown inside of here. All right, there's other properties, and guess what? I'm going to show you all this stuff right away. Not to confuse you, but so that you can take advantage of some of the built-in functionality that you have here. That's all. All right, so we'll go over accept button, cancel button, and start position. We'll go over the enabled property, the read-only property, the tab index, the tab stop I don't usually use, but we'll look at it anyway, and the text align we'll go over. So we're going to go over all these, so I'm not going to explain them right now. We'll go over access keys. All right, if you've ever used a product, and I guess these don't have them, but let's see if they have, well, they don't have it here either. So, but if you ever see like an underscore under the F where you can do an Alt F type of thing, I'll show you how to do that. All right. So we will talk a little bit about access keys. We'll talk about the enter and the escape key, and that's with the accept and cancel button. All right. We'll talk about how to set different settings. What you should be able to do. I'm going to ask that you try to do this by tomorrow. No, it's not homework. No, you're not getting any points for it. No, you don't have to do it. But if you follow, this is towards the end of the chapter, and you create a new project, you can put it in your same solution or in another one. It doesn't matter. but they tell you what to name everything. All right? So there's all the names. And then they tell you how to rename the form, and they tell you how to save it. If you can build that, all right, which is pretty much, I believe what that is this one here, then you're on your way to understanding this. All right? Then at the end of the chapter here, they talk about designing a simple form. This is very similar to one of the assignments that you're going to have. All right? So that's it. So what I'm going to do right now are two different things. First, I'm going to come back to here. And I had this up there before. I don't know if I kept it. Yes, I did. I'm going to start a timer in just a moment. And when we come back, I have now gone through the slides for Chapter 2. So when we come back, I'm going to go in our textbook. I'm going to go back into here, and you'll notice it's not a long chapter. Our last chapter was 30 pages. This is a little more than half that. So we should be able to go over this fairly quickly, but I'm going to do this as I'm building a new project with you. I'm going to suggest you try to build it along with me. You'll probably make some mistakes, or something won't happen the way you think it will. If that happens, just ask. I'm more than happy to work with you on this stuff. All right? So I'm going to hit the button then right now. We're going to take a break. It's 10:15. I'm going to start back up at 10:25. I've got to go to my office for just a moment, and I'll be back in about a minute or two, but I'll see you then. Good morning. What's that? Yeah. Yep. You too. Thanks. That's the Discord server. What else do we have? Oh. There we go. Oh, doggone it. Right. Oops, try that again. No, I should have stopped that, but I didn't. All right, I'm back. I'm hoping that you are. So again, what I plan on doing now, and it'll probably take either the rest of the, well, most of the rest of the period, is I'm going to go over chapter 2, but as we go over this, I'm going to build a couple applications. The two that we've done so far, the payroll one that we did as a GUI, as a console app, and the one we just did today, that tax one that we did as a console app. All right. Now, just to get us started, and I am going to go through the book, but I want to go back to here. All right, and I'm going to close this. So right now, as you can see, hopefully see, at least a little bit. Whoops, try that again. And that is, right now I've got on here payroll 01, payroll 02, and taxes console. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a brand new project under my solution. Again, if you want to follow along, great. If it's easier for you just to watch, then do that. Totally fine. On the solution here, click on that. Don't double click it, just click on it. Left mouse click, then right mouse click on it. Choose Add, New Project. You've seen this before, but this is going to change. Up in here, I want you to type in Windows Form, and it'll show you a bunch of listings. If you look, there's a lot of them in there. We want to choose the Windows Forms app.net framework. All right, so I'm going to click on that, and again, you can either double click on this one or single click and choose Next. All right, now I've got payroll 01, payroll 02. I'm just going to call this one payroll GUI, GUI, Graphical User Interface, payroll GUI. All right, it's already being saved in the right place, and again, I don't have to play with the framework. So I click Create, and you'll notice immediately the screen looks much different than it did previously. Now, I'm going to pretend for a second we still had the same problems as last time, and that is I'm going to pretend that your screen comes up and it looks like this. You don't have anything else showing. So again, I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go down halfway to Toolbox, and I'm going to click on it. Notice there's a shortcut key. I never use that because I can't remember those. So I'm going to do a View Toolbox, and boom, there's my toolbox. Now, right now, it's covering up part of my form here. So if I click this little stick pin that right now is pointing to the right, and I click it, you'll notice how it moves it over. And if I make this bigger, it moves everything over. I don't want it bigger. This is plenty big. But just so you get that idea. All right, this is my Form Designer area. I'm going to come in and click View again. And first I'm going to choose Solution Explorer, which is the second or third one down. Now that's back. And I can move this quite a bit over now because this will be about the size of my form. And now click View one more time, and I'm going to Properties window. All right? Now, right now it doesn't look like much, but notice what happens right now if I click on the form. This in here really changed a lot. These are the properties for my form. So what we're going to do, first of all, is let's just talk about the form. The form is the holder, for lack of better words. You'll notice that it's got little circles over here. I can click on this and make it wider or more narrow. I can click in the corner and do that. I can click down here and make it higher, etc. All right? Right now, by default, the name of our form is form1.cs. I don't like that. I want to change the name of that to FRM payroll. Now, I want to show you the way to do it, not the way not to do it, the way to do it. And that is, you should click on this so it turns blue, right mouse click on it, and choose Rename. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to type in FRM, all in lowercase. All right, that's the prefix for a form. And then the word payroll with a capital P and everything else in lowercase. So FRM payroll. Now I'm going to hit enter. Watch the magic. All right. It says you are renaming a file. Would you like to perform a rename on everything that refers to it? Yes. So now notice it changed the name of these two files as well. My designer file, which we're not going to talk about at this minute, and our resx file, which we're not going to talk about at this minute. But we've changed the name. What's one way I can tell that we've changed the name? Well, look up here. If I click in here, it says now our name is FRM Payroll. Previously, it just said Form 1 there. Now, I'm going to pretend at least I did that too fast. So I want to show you one more time how to do it. Yours, if it still says form1.cs, click on it. So let me click on it to make it blue. Right mouse click on it. Choose Rename. You don't have to worry about the stuff that's in white right there, the .cs. That we want to keep. But then name it FRM followed by something. I want you to get used to using good names. This is a payroll program. I'm calling my form FRM Payroll. To me, that makes sense. When I did that and I hit enter, it came back with a dialog box over here, and it says, hey, do you want me to change the name of everything that refers to this form from Form 1 to FRM Payroll? I said yes, and it changed these things right here. All right, hopefully I went through that slow enough that it made sense. Now, here's our form. Let's talk about a couple things that we can do with it. First of all, this is a payroll program. All right, so this is the text for our form where it says Form 1. I'm going to go into my Properties window, and I'm going to go down, and if yours, there's a bunch of different buttons here, as you'll notice. They all mean something different. We'll talk about them all at one time or other. I'm going to click and choose the third one over right here that says Properties. All right, then I'm going to arrow down because it should be in alphabetic order. I'm going to arrow down to where it says Text. And now it says Form 1, and I'm going to change it from Form 1 to this is my first graphical graphical user interface, and I'll make this wider so you can read it, parenthesis GUI, C# program. It's a little bit big, but you get the idea. And notice how it changed here. All right? So we've just changed the first property of one of our controls in a graphical user interface application. Now, I'm going to show you the next thing, and the only reason I'm going to show it to you is because otherwise you'll find it yourself, and then I'll probably lose control over you. And that is, I'm clicking on the form again to activate it. I'm going all the way up, and I'm going to find back color. And right now it says control, because that's the default color, which is an ugly gray. If you want to keep that for every program you do, fine, go ahead and do that. But if I click on the box here, and then click on the down arrow that's right here, it gives me some things I can choose. I'm going to click, the one I always choose is just custom. All right? And choose any color you'd like. I mean, you can make it white. I'm going to choose the turquoise. And it's pretty obvious right away what we just did. So that's changing yet another color on my form. Or another property on my form. So far I've come in and I've changed 3 properties of this form. I've changed the name property, but I did it here and not down in here, because the way I showed you here, by clicking rename, that's the recommended way to do it. Then we changed the text property in here. And then finally we changed the back color property in here. All right? So with all that out of the way, let's jump back into our book and see if I've missed anything. So how to get started, how to design a form, how to finish your design. Okay, let's see. So they talk about how to configure Visual Studio. This is what I mentioned before. You know, once we set that we wanted our stuff saved on our desktop, it should be okay after that. If you need to, you can go back in there and display this. I'm not going to go over it. I find it a little confusing myself. So creating a new project, guess what? You know how to do that. But we created a new project, and we created it inside of the existing solution. All right? We could have made a brand new solution and put the project in there. All right. Now, how to design a form. This is the form they're doing. So you'll notice it has 4 labels. It has 4 text boxes. It has 2 buttons. We're going to make something almost identical to it. Ours will be a little more complex because we're going to have here first name, last name, and we'll put in here just what we showed before, and that is hours, rate. We'll have another label down here that says gross, and a text box for the gross. All right? The first name, all of these except for the gross, none of these will be read-only. And we'll put another button in here between these two that's called clear, that when we click it, we'll make all the fields clear, and we'll make our cursor go to the first field. We're going to do all that. All right? And so that's how they're talking about. So a label displays text. It's a heading. The text box allows you to either input or it can show output of information. And a button typically is clicked to make something happen. All right. So let's go in, and I'm not going to even worry about what they say right now. I'm going to show you what I think is the most intuitive, straightforward way of doing this. So right now, I'm going to have us build our form. Now, don't follow me yet, because I want to show you this. Then I want to show you what I think is the easier way to do it, and you pick. So again, let's just start with our buttons. I can double-click where it says all Windows Forms. I can double-click on button, and boom, it puts a button right there. Then I can take it, move it into place. Then I can double-click on button again, and it makes another one, and I can move it into place, and then I can do it again, and I can move it into place. Nothing wrong with doing it that way. Not a thing. All right? Now, let me hit delete. There. Oh, I was trying to get rid of them, so let's see. Delete. Okay. Or I can click on button, hold down on my left mouse button, drag it over and drop it and put it exactly where I want that one, and that one, and that one. All right? Or, and this is the way I like to do it, and I want to show you why. All right? I'm going to just do that and put out one button. So I'm going to go over to button here. I'm going to hold down on the left mouse and click on here and let go. I'm not going to worry right now about renaming it. I'm not going to worry about the text. What I want to do is set the size of the button. So you see all these circles here. I'm going to click to make it bigger. That made it wider. And now I'm going to click to make it taller. All right? I'm not worrying right now about the text that's in there or anything else. I want 2 more of these buttons. But if I go and add another one, notice it makes it the default size. I don't want that. I want all 3 of my buttons to be the same size. So now that I've made one, I can do a Control-C to copy and a Control-V to paste, and then do it again. And now I've got 3 buttons, and all 3 are the same size. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense to you. Now, the other thing I can do now, let's suppose that, oh, you know what, I want these buttons at the top of the program. I don't, but we're going to pretend for a moment that I do want these buttons, at the top of my program. I could move them all, but that's kind of tough, and I can line them up. It gives me these little lines here, so now they're pretty much lined up. All right? But now I'm just going to, I'm going to show you an easier way. That is, I take my mouse, I'm now holding down on the left mouse button, and I'm dragging. This is called lassoing the buttons. And I let go, and they're all highlighted, so now I can move them collectively as a group. All right? The other nice thing about that is once I got them now, they're still all highlighted. I'm going to come over to my Properties window, and now I'm setting properties at one time for all 3 buttons. So what you'll notice here is I don't have the name property and I don't have the text property. I do have text, but it's not going to work the way you think it would work. So what I want to do instead is these buttons, the text on the buttons is kind of small. I want it to be a little bigger. So with all 3 of these buttons highlighted, I'm going to go up to or down to, depending on where you are in your properties window, to font. And where it says Microsoft Sans Serif 8.25 points, I'm going to just click on that. And it brings up an ellipsis. I'm going to click on the ellipsis, and if you've ever worked with products like Word, you probably have seen something like this before. All right? I'm going to go up. I like using Arial. You can use whatever you want, as long as it's readable. So Arial, I'm going to make it bold. All right? And I'm going to make it, let's say, 16 point. And then click OK, and you can see what happened. All right? Now my buttons have been set up, and they're looking the way I want. All right? So the next thing I'm going to do is I could add my other controls, but I'm just going to work with my buttons for right now. I'm going to just click on one button. I'm going to change the name of this button from button 1 to BTN Calculate. BTN Calculate. That's the name I'm going to use in code. So when I hit enter, it still says button 1, but its name is now BTN Calculate. Then I'm going to go down to the text, and I'm going to put in here the word calculate. So now I've done that one. All right. My second button, I'm going to do a similar thing, but I'm going to put the text for that button as clear, and I'm going to put the name of the button to BTN Clear. And then finally, for my last button, I'm going to call this one BTN Exit. And I'm going to put the text for it as Exit. Now I've got my buttons pretty much looking the way I want them to look. It's not perfect. It looks like this one should be moved over a little bit, etc. But it's pretty darn good. It's pretty much the way I want it to look. Now, I'm going to don't you do this. If you're following along, don't do what I'm about to do. All right, I'm going to just grab another button up here. I always recommend that when you create controls, create the controls, kind of position them in place where you want them, then either set the name and then set the text, or set the text and then the name. Why? I mean, you might say, who cares? Big deal. Why? Well, notice if I double click now on my button that says BTN calculate, what happens? It brings up a code window. That's where we'll write our code, but notice what the code window is for. If I had double clicked on the button before I said its name, that would say button 1. All right, you don't want that. So you want to always name your controls before you go in and put code in there. This one will say BTN clear. This one will say BTN exit. Perfect. That's what I want. So I'm going to go to this one. Let's pretend for a minute that this was going to be another button, and I was going to put it someplace else. I don't care what it's going to say. I'm going to remove it in a minute. But I forgot to rename it, and I double-clicked on it. And it says button 1 click. Darn, I didn't mean to do that. Do not go in here and highlight it like this and hit delete, because it'll give you an error. Why? Because there's already been a system file, one of these files that we looked at that I told you here, this designer file has now got a button in here someplace that's called button 1. If you go in and manually, whoops, I removed the wrong one. No, you go in and you manually remove this, it does not remove it in the designer file. So I want to show you, in case you do this accidentally, how you remove it and the right way to remove it. So just leave it alone, all right? And then go back in here, go back into design mode, all right? And I think I closed that, so I'm going to write, let's see, View Designer, there we go. And click on it so it's highlighted. Then, on these buttons that you have here, go over to the one that looks like a lightning bolt. On that one, and notice it says button 1 click. Highlight all that, hit delete, move off of it, and what you'll notice now is that's gone. That's how you remove a control where you accidentally put in a control you didn't want, or you haven't renamed it yet, or whatever. That is so important that I want to do it one more time. So I've got this button 1. I'm going to accidentally, wink, wink, double click on it. Now I've got button 1 click. Geez, I don't want that. Notice if I do what I told you not to do, if I come in here and just remove that, okay? Now when I go back to my designer, it gives me an error. And it says, hey, my designer file, this system file, and my actual form designer are out of sync. If you get that, click on it. Then you'll have to manually come in here and find where it's got button 1 click, and you'll have to remove that. I think that'll fix everything. We'll find out right now. All right? So if I go back to design, now I can see it again. To me, that's way too much work. And you might forget how to do that. So again, if you do accidentally do this, all right, go back to your designer window, not to the form designer. Don't play with that if you can help it. Go back to your window here, click on this, click on the lightning bolt, find the click routine for the button, highlight where it says button 1 underscore click, and remove everything that's there. All right, I know that was long, but I wanted you to understand that. All right. I'm going to remove that button now because I don't need it. Now, I want to do two things they're both talked about in the chapter. That is, when I click this calculate button, boom, I want the code to run. When I click the clear button, boom, I want that code to run. All right? But to make it easier on myself, once I enter everything up here and what I'm about to put in just a couple minutes, instead of hitting calculate, I want to just be able to hit the enter key and have it run for me. And when I want to clear it, rather than clearing, I just want to hit the escape key. If you don't know where the escape key is, it's in the upper left corner of your keyboard. So the button that's going to run, the code that's going to run when I hit enter is what's called my accept button. So I want you to click on a blank spot on the form, anywhere you want, but not on the buttons, on a blank spot on the form. Then in here, find where it says, move this over a little bit if I can. I got to click back to here, all right? And I want you to find where it says accept button. Again, this is in alphabetical order, so it shouldn't be hard to do. All right, and then under accept button, it says none. If I click on it, I get a down arrow. And I want to choose BTN calculate. So now I've shown you not only how to create buttons, but how to go and change the name of a button, how to change the text on a button, and how to change one of the properties of a button. For the clear, I'm again going to click on my form. I'm going to go down to where it says cancel button. And I'm going to again click on it, click on the down arrow, and I'm going to choose, all right, BTN clear. Now those have both been set. All right, I can tell by looking at this, and considering I'm going to put 4 or 5 fields in there, this is probably not big enough. So I'm going to make this bigger, and then I'm going to move these down. All right, and I just showed you how to do that. If you missed it earlier, I highlighted all of them by holding down on the left mouse button and drawing an invisible box. It's called lassoing the controls and letting go. Then I drag them all at the same time down. All right? Now, I want to get to the meat, so to speak, of my program. All right, I'm going to go up to label here, and I'm only going to put in 1, and you'll see why in just a second. All right? These labels are really, really small. All right? This is going to be my first name, but I want to make it bigger. The first thing I can do if I want to do is I can go back down to my font that I showed you before. I can click this again. I can go back to Arial, or I can make it a different thing if I wanted to. I can make it bold again. I can make it 16 point again. And you'll notice it did get bigger. All right? But I still want it to be bigger than that. Well, how do I do that? I notice I don't have these little handles here, so I can't click on it and make it bigger. But if I go over to here and click on the button itself, and then go, and I've got to find a control called auto size. Now this is one place, as far as I'm concerned, Microsoft is counterintuitive, because the auto size property, when set to true, means you cannot size it. When set to false, you can size it. To me, it should be the other way around, but if I ask them, they'd say, that's fine, Jeff. When you write your own C#, then you do it that way. Now there's 2 ways I can change this. I can click on it, I get the down arrow, and I can change it to false. And you may or may not notice, but I've got the little dots now where I can resize it. If I don't want to do it that way, it's a toggle switch, so I can just double click it. Either way will work. All right, so why did I show you that? Well, now I've got one label. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. All right, it looks good. It now, notice it now lines up with my button. It's not that perfect, but it's better. But I'm going to click on it and do one more thing. I'm going to go down in my properties window, and I'm going to go to text align, not text, text align. And it's kind of weird because when you click it, you click the down arrow, it gives you that. I want this means left justified center, etc. I want to use the center one, but I want it to be right justified because it's going to butt up right against what I'm about to put in for these text boxes in a minute. So there it is. So there's my label, and that's good. So this will be my first name, but remember, I want first name, I want last name, I want hours worked, I want hourly rate, and I want gross pay. So I want to actually have 5 of these. So I'm going to do a Control-C, Control-V, and I'm going to paste it in 5 times or 4 times. Again, this isn't perfect. Right now, I'm just eyeballing it, all right? But it doesn't look too bad. If I decide, you know what, now that's actually more room than I need, I can always highlight these. I can move these up if I want to do that, etc., all right? And then I can change this, and I can move that up. I don't have to do that, but again, any way I want to do it. It's my form, All right, so now I'm going to come in and I'm going to rename these. This is going to be the first name, so I'm going to name this LBL, first with a capital F, name with a capital N. Do not put blank spaces in these names. Do not put special characters in these names. So that's first name. Then I'm going to come down to the text property, and I'm going to put in here first space name colon. And I put a capital I for first, which I didn't mean to do. So first name. Boom. There's my first label. So you can imagine what else I'm going to do here. I'm going to come to the next one, and I'm going to say the text on here will be last name colon, and I've got that, but I've got to change the name. And I'm going to change the name of this to LBL last name. Then I'm going to work my way down. So this will be LBL hours. I could just call it hours, but I'll call it hours worked. All right. And then down here, I will call this hours worked. Whoops, goofed it up again. Worked. And there's that. Now notice it's not showing. That means this has got to be a little bit wider. There it is. Now, when I did that, now that one's wider than the rest of them are. If I want to make sure that they all stay the same size, let me change it again. So hours worked. Good golly. If it looks like this, and I want to change the width of all of them, I lasso them. And move over any one, and there. Now they're all still the same size. All right. So I've got my first name, I've got my last name, and I've got my hours worked. Let's finish this up. I'm going to call this one, the text will be hourly rate. So there's that. And then I'm going to go up, and I'm going to rename this LBL hourly rate and hit enter. Finally, this last one is going to be gross pay. So I will rename it LBL gross pay, and I will put the text in there as gross pay. So you can see, hopefully you can see that this is coming together. It doesn't look perfect yet. There's things I want to change, etc., but it's getting there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a text box. So I'm going to come down here and find text box. There it is. And I'm going to bring it up here and let go. Now, these you can resize. All right, but you can't make the width bigger. I'm going to do that right now. All right, so I've got that out there. It looks okay where it is. It's pretty much where I want it. So I'm going to again come in like I showed you before, and I'm going to do 16 bold and Arial. Now, no one's asked this, but in case you do, yeah, I could have waited till I was all done and I could have highlighted everything and done everything with the font at one time. I could have done it that way too. All right. So on here, I'm not going to rename it yet. Instead, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. 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 Now, again, this is by no means perfect, but my interface is coming together and it doesn't look too bad. Excuse me. What I don't want to do now is accidentally move something so it looks out of kilter, so to speak. So I'm going to show you something, and I don't know if this is in your book or not. I'm going to lasso everything. So it's all highlighted now. Then pick out a control. I'm going to right mouse click on it, and I'm going to choose Lock Controls. Now everything's in place, and it cannot move. See that? I can't move these. None of them. If I want to move something later, I just highlight it and choose Lock Controls again, and that'll unlock it. But to me, that makes sense, because now it's looking the way I want it to look. All right? Now, we're going to rename these, and then we're going to add our code. So, since I called this one LBL first name, I'm going to call this one TXT first name. By no means would you have to do that, but it makes a lot of sense to me to call them the same thing. So TXT first name. And I'm quickly going to come through here, and this one will be TXT last name. This next one will be TXT hours worked. The next one will be TXT hourly rate. And the last one will be TXT gross pay. Now, before I go in and actually start adding some code to my buttons, which is what I want to do next, before I do that, all right, I want to make sure that I haven't, I've renamed everything. Well, how can I do that? If you look up here, I can grab this properties window and I can drag it up to make it a little bigger. I'm going to do it temporarily and make it bigger. Why? Because where we've got this white thing in here, I'm going to click the down arrow, and that shows me the name of every control I've got on my form, including the form. So if I forgot to rename something, I could find it right here. I can also use this to jump to any control that I want to jump to. All right? So that's fine. Everything has been renamed. So again, I'm just going to bring that back down. I don't need it to be that big. This should be fine. So now my form is looking the way I want it to look. I've even got my calculate button. I've even got my clear button. And those are my default, my accept and my cancel. Good. Now, I'm going to run it because I want to show you a couple more things we want to change. The first one is when I run it, same way, clicking that button. Whoop, I'm sorry. I've got to go and set my startup project. So let's do that. So right mouse click where it says FRM payroll and choose, come on, where are you? Not there. I want to do it on payroll GUI. Right mouse click and choose set as startup project. All right. If I did it too fast, I'll do it again. Right mouse click on payroll GUI and choose set as startup project. All right. Okay. Now when I run it, and again, this is me, but I want you to get good habits right away. This isn't in the middle of the screen. I can move it, but why should I have to do that? Plus, is it right in the middle? I don't know. So I'm going to show you how to set it up so that it sets in the middle of the screen. So click on a blank spot on the form right there. Doesn't matter. It can be up here, anywhere you want. And then go down, and there should be something in here that says Start Position, right down near the very bottom. And it's set to Windows default location. Click here and you'll get a down arrow. Choose it, set it to center screen. If you say, what do the other ones mean? I don't ever use them, so I can't tell you. But after changing that to center screen, all right, I'm going to do a file save all just to be sure I've got my changes and restart. And now you'll notice it is in the middle of the screen. All right, these are aesthetic things, but if you're making an application for someone, they're only going to see your completed project. All right, we can also do things, we're not going to talk about them right now, but we can set it up so we can minimize, we can maximize, etc. But you look, if I maximize, you see that doesn't look really that nice. This looks a lot nicer, in my opinion. All right. Now, one more thing we're going to do, then we're going to add our code. Right now, if I click these buttons, they don't do a flaming thing because there's no code associated with them. All right. But one thing I'd like to be able to do, and unfortunately, let's see. Okay. I want to be able to click here. When my program starts, I want it to go into first name. And I want to be able to hit the tab key. You can see right now, it's putting it in the order I want it to be in, but it might not be in that order. So I want to assure that when I run the program, it starts here, then if I hit tab, it goes to here, then if I hit tab, it goes to here, then if I hit tab, it goes to here. I don't want a tab to here. This is going to be read-only in a minute, but I want the tab order to go here, then here, then here, then here, then here, then here, then here. So I'm going to show you how to set the tab order, and it is not at all difficult. from our design window here, and we are in design mode here, I'm just going to click on View, and I'm going to choose 2/3 of the way down, 3/4 of the way down, tab order. And you'll notice I get a bunch of numbers. Once I click on here, now it becomes 0, 1, 2, 3. I don't want that to be 4. So 4, 5, 6. Technically, you won't have to set it for these, but I do anyway. So that'll be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, the numbers stay on the screen until you do another View, tab order. Now they go away. Now you'll notice if I run the program again, it's in the center, and you can see where the cursor is. And I can start tabbing. Now, notice I cannot tab. You cannot tab to a label. Labels, once the program is running, are read-only. Even though I set the tab order, that's why I wouldn't really have had to. All right? Now, no one's stopping me and asking me questions, and I wish you would if you have any. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing the code. You all with me? I'm going to start writing the code. Before I do, what do we want to have happen? Well, when we click Calculate, we want to make sure there's a number in here and a number in here. And if we got numbers in both, we want to multiply them and put it here. That's all we want to do for Calculate. When we clear, we want to take any value in here, any value in here, any value in here, any value in here, and any value in here. We want to remove the value, clear the value out, and we want to put the cursor back there. And when we click Exit, we want to bring up a box that says, are you sure you want to quit the program? And if they say yes, we want to exit. That's the code we have to put in. One last thing before we put that in, I'm going to go to gross pay. I'm going to click on the text box, TXT gross pay. I'm going to find the thing that says read only, and it says false. I'm going to double click it so it says true. You'll notice it turns gray. Sometimes I'll leave them gray like that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll make them the same color. I'll go to back color here, and I'll make it the same color as the background, except I'll make it one shade darker. All right? Do what you want to do with these. Don't make it black. I just think that looks very unprofessional. A lot of times you'll just find people who keep the gray color, which is totally fine. But now notice that when the program runs, I cannot click inside. Well, I can click in there, but I can't enter anything in there. I'm trying to type now. Here I can type, here I can type, here I can type, here I can type, here I can't do a flaming thing. What some people will do is instead of making that a read-only text box, they'll make it another label, because then for sure you can't write to it. All right, either way will work. Now, I'm not going to do these in order. All right, I'm going to go and actually do them in reverse order. So I'm going to do my exit button first. All right, so I'm going to put in the code for the exit button. Now, please listen to me for a second. During the break, I sent you an email with the code for the exit button. And there it is, right here. So I'll copy it in, and if you want to go grab it, you can grab it, but if that's too much work or you just don't want to, I'll put the code up here so you see it. All right? So there's the code. All right? Now, I'm going to make this a little narrower. All right? So this is all the code. Let me go over what this whole thing is doing in here. This is the routine that's going to run when I click the exit button. I'll leave it up there. All right, so if you want to, you can type it in yourselves. Okay, first of all, I see a problem. I don't know if any of you saw this, but I screwed up. I call that BTH, not BTN. Can you all see what I'm saying? I did that accidentally. I wish I could say I did it on purpose. All right, so I'm going to try something that's supposed to work, and it's a fairly new thing in here. And that is if I go back to here, and that's N, what is it, BTN? This is the one that's wrong. I clicked on the button. I'm going to right mouse click on it. Well, I'll try it over here. Let's see. I had heard there was a rename that you could use here. but it doesn't look like it. I'll tell you what, for now, I'll get you how to fix that, but for now, I'll just keep it BTH. It's fine. It's stupid, but it's fine. But let's talk about what's happening here. For right now, this method says private. What that means is if we had other projects that could access this program, they can't call this button. This button can only be called from inside of this routine. That's what private means. It's private to what's called this class. All right? And if you don't understand it, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. All right. Then it's the name of the control, underscore, and what we want to do here. And that is click. So it's when we click this button. This is what did the action. All right? So the sender is what did the action. It's us. And this are any arguments we want to pass. For now, you don't have to worry a bit about these. We won't use those until later on in the semester. Totally fine. All right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the program again, and I'm going to click the exit button so I can explain everything that's inside of here, and hopefully it'll make more sense to you. All right. Now I'm going to click exit, and you can see this. All right, and let me do this. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to run it again, but when I do this, I'm going to try to move this stuff over as much as I can. So I'm going to, for now at least, I'm going to really move this over a lot there. All right, so I'm going to run the program again. And here's my exit button. And when I click exit, there it is. I should be good. I can move this. Good. So what we just did was we created what's called a dialog. This whole thing is called a message box. The dialog, the first thing we put in here is what do we want it to say? And that is, do you really want to exit? So that's what's called the dialog text. Then we put in the title for the dialog. You don't have to do this, but I always put my titles in uppercase, just so it stands out. So exit now is the dialog title. Do you really want to exit is the dialog text. Then we said we want it to contain two buttons, yes and no. That line right here made these two buttons. And you may have already figured out, we said the icon we want for this is question. So it put the Q there. So this code that you see, and let me just say yes. All right. This code that's right here, that built the dialog box. That's what it did. All right. And it created the dialog as a message box. We're going to be using message boxes a lot. All right. And then this says if we click the yes button, remember there was yes and no, this says exit the program. Application.exit. We could have also just typed in close, paren. But this is the most normal, natural way to end an application is to put in application.exit. And you'll notice that's an if statement, which means if we chose yes. But remember, there's also a no button. If we click no, nothing happened. Why? Because we told it not to do anything if we didn't click yes. So I'm also showing you an if statement in here. Now that's something we don't hit on till about chapter 4, but if we followed what was in the book, let me grab this for a second, I'll put it right back. This is what the author has you type in right now. All right? So if I run the program and you click exit, boom, it just exits. I don't like that. All right? And the reason I don't like it is if I accidentally had come in there, come on. If I accidentally had come in there and clicked that button, now I'm gone and I've got to start, it's not a big thing, but what if this was an application I'm running on a bigger machine, etc. All right? So I want to do it like this. All right? So that's the first one. All right? I still got this button 1 in here. Wow, I thought I'd remove that. So let's look. It's not in here anymore. I don't have anything, I don't think, that says button 1. I showed you how to look. There is no button 1 in here. There isn't any, I can tell. So now I could go in if I wanted to, and I could, oops, well, I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. I could now come in and actually physically remove that. It's not going to hurt anything. I won't get any errors when I go back again to here. So we put in the exit button. I've already told you for the clear button, clear this, clear this, clear this, clear this, clear this, put the cursor back here. So we're going to do that next. All right? The order in which you clear the text boxes doesn't matter, but I'm going to do them in the order they are. So I'm first going to clear the first name, then the last name, then the hours worked, then the hourly rate, then the gross pay, and then I'm going to set the focus or my cursor back there. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code. All right, the first 5 will look remarkably similar to one another. So txt first name, whoops, I got to spell it right. First name dot text equals nothing. Txt last name dot text equals nothing. Txt hours worked dot text equals nothing. Txt hourly rate dot text equals nothing. Txt gross pay dot text equals nothing. Remember again, if you do want everything to line up, after you put it in like this, you can do that. And that's a semicolon, should be there. All right? So the only thing that's left to do is to come back in and say txt first name dot focus, which means put the cursor there. That's all of our code. I'll come right back to it, but let's test it first and make sure it works. I'm just going to put garbage in here, and in here, and in here, and in here, and since this is read-only, I cannot enter anything there. But you see where my cursor is. If this works correctly, all the values in here should disappear, and my cursor should jump back there. So click clear, and it did. There's my flashing cursor. So we have now put in all the code for our clear button. Again, I'm going to send you all this stuff. And time is already getting away from me. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do the exit button, or the calculate button next. I'm going to send you this. All right? And then like we did today, what I'm going to do at the beginning of next class is I'm going to give you about 15 minutes, and you might need more than that, but that's okay. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to recreate the other one that we did that had the first name, last name, the item that you bought, the price, etc., and try to do that one as a GUI. But then as we start out as a group tomorrow, I'll do that one for you. All right? So we've got 2 of our buttons, and we got just the calculate button to go. So, all right, so what do we have to do in here? Well, what we want to do is when we double-click this, we want to take what's in here and multiply it by what's in here and put it there. All right? So let's do that. Now to do this, now I'm going to create some variables. All right? So I'm going to create 3 of them. I'm going to make a decimal variable, and I'm going to call it hours worked, and I'm going to set it equal to 0.00m. Then I'm going to create another one, a decimal, and it's going to be called hourly rate. And I'm going to set that equal to 0.00m. And one more, I'm going to call it decimal gross pay. And I'm going to set that equal to 0.00m. And again, because I am a little anal about this stuff, I am going to line this stuff up. I like the way it looks better. If you don't, again, don't do it. Now, what I want the hours worked to do is I want it to hold the value that's in here. What I want the hourly rate to do is hold the value that's in here. And I want to multiply them and put that in here. But there's a little more to it than that. Remember, if I just set it equal to what's in the text box, it's text. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say hours worked equals convert dot to decimal. What do I want to convert? Well, I want to convert txt hours worked dot text. So this is telling me to convert what I have put into that text box into a decimal and store it in hours worked. And since it's real similar, I'll do the same thing with hourly rate. All right. Now I can say gross pay equals hours worked times hourly rate. All right. But now I want to go in the other order. I want to take what I've done and I want to take that gross pay and I want to stick that into here. Plus, it's kind of nice. I'm going to format it. I'm only formatting this one, and I'm going to format it to dollars and cents, etc., with a dollar sign. All right? So I'm going to do it in the other direction. I'm going to say txt gross pay dot text equals gross pay dot toString, and I'm going to format it with currency. Our program is actually done, to my knowledge. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and try it. All right. So let's come in here and John Doe. John worked 30 hours and John makes $25 an hour. Now, I'm not going to click calculate because I set that accept button up, so I'm just going to hit the enter key. And there's my $750. I want to clear it so I can start it again. I could hit my calculate, my clear button, but instead I'm going to hit my escape key because that's what I set cancel button to. All right. Now I'm going to exit. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to exit. I want to do one more thing because, again, this is how I write programs. You may or may not agree. To me, it would be nice if everything in these fields, if all these were centered. Real easy to do. I'm coming down here. I'm going to find text align. I lassoed all of them so I can do all of them at once. And I'm going to say center. So what's the difference? Let's run it again. Notice where it is now. Jeff, oops, tab, Scott, tab. So my tab order's working. All right, 40, tab 10. Now I'm going to click the calculate button. Now that's working. I'm going to click the clear button. Now that's working. I'm going to click the exit button. Now that's working. Now, I did that quick, and I don't know. If you said, damn right you did, my head's spinning, I'd understand it. All right? I go back, and you guys who were in the class last semester may have heard me say this analogy before. But I remember years ago taking my car in to a guy that I got to know because I had a car that was problematic. And he was always doing work on my car. And basically what he'd do is I'd drive it into his garage, and he'd immediately pop the hood, and he knew right where to look. Well, how did he know that? It was because of all those years of experience plus knowing my car. That's why I can make this fairly quickly, where it's much harder for you to do so, especially if you've never done it before. And I get that. All right? So I'm going to send you this working one. All right? You can use this as a template when you try to create the other one. All right? And for that other one, remember that we came in here and we call this taxes console. So what I'm going to ask that you try to do tomorrow is click on solution, right mouse click, do another add project, add new project. All right, again, come up here, type in Windows form, choose the Windows form .net with a C#, double click it, or click it and choose the next. We'll call this one taxes GUI because we call the other one taxes console. All right, it's already, everything is set, and boom, now we've got the beginning of our next one. All right, but I want to do two more things. All right, and that is first, I want to go back to this one, and I want to quickly, oops, there it is, look at all of the code, every bit of it. You'll notice what we don't have in here is we've got that using system, but now we got a new one, system forms. All the ones that are not gray, that we keep. The ones that are gray, we can get rid of, or you can keep them. It doesn't hurt anything. All right? You'll notice in here we've got a thing that says initialize component. All right? And literally what that is going to do in here, and it's in here someplace, I don't remember, but we'll find it. All right? I think it should be payroll GUI, payroll CS. Well, in one of these, it literally is going to call in one of these files. Let's try resx. It's not resx. You don't want to open that one. And it's not the designer, but it's calling main. There is a main in here. All right? So, using system, which is going to allow us to do those convert things that we talked about. This we need if we're doing forms. We called it payroll GUI, so that's the name of our namespace. The name of this, it's our class, but don't worry about classes until we get to about chapter 12. It's FRM payroll, so that will be this name here. And it's of type form. So FRM payroll is a child or a type of form. That's what this means. All right? It's going to automatically, when we start, call initialize component, which just means it's going to invoke main, all right, which is going to tell us to do all this stuff. It's going to set the form up for us. Then what do we have in here? We've got our calculate, all right, and in our calculate, we created variables, and those variables hold the value we're putting in here, the value we're putting in here, and the value we want to put in there. And that's these three variables right here, and I made them all decimals. Then we're telling it to convert what we put into the hours worked text box into a decimal. Again, as I showed you before, if I come through here and run this, and I put in Jeff, and I put in Scott, and I put in hello, and I click calculate, the program is going to break. Input string was not in the correct format. Our data validation failed. Why? Because basically we didn't put in any. We just told it to convert. Later on in the semester, we'll have a whole chapter that we go through on data validation. So you'll see how to do validation. All right? All right, so let's go back and view the code. All right, so we convert those two just like we did. This stuff in here, believe it or not, is almost identical to what we did in our console, except rather than using these, we put in read line. Other than that, it's the same code. All right? And then when it appears on the left-hand side of an equal sign, we're taking what's in the text box and assigning it to a variable. When it appears on the left-hand, so when it's on the right-hand side of the equal sign, hopefully I said that right, but when these text boxes are on the right-hand side of an equal sign, we're taking their values and assigning them to variables. When the text box is on the left-hand side of an equal sign, we're grabbing a variable and we're assigning that variable to our text box. All right? Then we had our clear, which just said grab every one of those fields, and we've got, what, 5 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So clear, 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 clear. Put the cursor there. That's what these 5 lines of text are doing. And we now know that there's 2 ways we can invoke this. We can either click the button that's right here, or we can hit our escape key. We've got 2 ways we can invoke this. We can either click our button, or we can hit the enter key. And those are because we came in here and under the form, we came in and we set our accept button to our calculate button. We set our cancel button to our clear button. All right? And then finally for our exit, and I gave you this code. Again, it would have sufficed to just come in here and write close or application.exit. But we are giving the user a way out if they didn't mean to close the program. All right? I'm not even going to say, are there any questions on this? Because there might be a lot of them. But What I should have really been doing in here is things like this. Come in and say declare and initialize variables. All right, I even like to come in and do this. I like to come in and type in a comment here that says method that runs when the calculate button is clicked. All right? And then I'm just going to copy this. Why? Because this will be the method that runs when the clear button is clicked. And finally, this will be the method that runs when the exit button is clicked. And I could put in additional documentation. All right? What we will eventually be building towards is, technically, you don't want to put actual executable code under a button. You want to have this call a routine that's going to have this code in it. Don't worry about that right now. Totally fine. So we've got a complete working program. I am going to right now, what I'm going to do is, instead of giving you another break, I'm going to let you go early. All right, but I'm just going to keep going. So I'm going to do my save all, and I'm going to jump back into the chapter and go through it fairly quickly because we've hit on all the high points. All right. Whoops, wrong one. Sorry about that. But I will continue to do that. So I'm going to say slideshow, start from the beginning. So we didn't build this one. The one we built was actually more complex. But that's the one they use in the chapter. All right. They talk in here about classes and objects. Read this. Don't worry about memorizing it or anything, because chapters 12 through 16, I think it is, of your book. Let me check. I brought the book with me. I grabbed it during the break. So it is chapters, 12 through 16. That's all about objects and classes. So don't worry about it. All right? Properties are what we set in our properties window, but we can also set properties in code. How do I know that? You did it already. The .text property, we set that in our code. Methods are another name for functions. All right? Events, the event that we handle was the button click event of one of our 3 buttons. All right. Again, don't worry about objects and forms. We will talk about all that. All right. The code editor window, well, I wrote a bunch of code for you and showed it to you. There's a statement that refers to a property. We could have set that read-only thing. I showed you how to do it in the properties window. You could have set it in code as well, like this. All right, just here we would have said txt gross pay dot read only equal true. By us manually going into the properties window and doing that, it did the same thing. All right. All right. Again, like I said, I'm going to jump through this quick. We have hit on most of this, believe it or not. This is the thing that happens behind the scenes. So if you remember when I showed you, when I put in that thing for button 1, and then we tried to remove it and we got the error, this was the kind of code. It was in that designer file. All right. Notice how, again, they just say close. You can say close, or you can say this dot close. Either one will work. All right. These are some common events. We'll talk about more of them as we go on. So these are events, so like buttons have a click. We could have set it up so when you could click on a label, you could click on a text box or something else. All right? Some of these will only make sense for certain controls. Our form, when the form first starts, we load the form. When right before the form is actually closed, it calls closing. After it's been closed, it calls closed. If you don't put any code there, then it does nothing special because we didn't tell it to. If you wanted to respond to an event, you do what we just did. We came in, double-clicked it, and we put in our code. So you've seen all this already. How to handle the click event, that's what we just did. All right. And this is the code that they have. So the code in 19 and 20 is the code for that routine or that program. If you want to put that in yourselves as practice or whatever, go for it, right? So that's the code for it. And don't worry if you don't understand every bit of it. All right? Rules, as it says, use spaces to separate the words. If you don't do it, the editor will do it for you. Number 2 is very important. This is a case-sensitive language. All right, so capitalization does, can, will matter. End each executable statement of code with a semicolon. And if you've got a block of code, like all the code we put in for our buttons, etc., they go within curly braces. All right. If we had errors, they'd show down here. Let's introduce an error on purpose, just so you can see it. All right. I'm going to get rid of that semicolon. And now here you can see it says semicolon expected. If I double click on it, it does everything it can to show that to me. See that? All right. But I'm going to come in here. Let's see. I don't know if it'll find it like this. I'm going to put instead of focus, I'm going to leave the C off. So it says focus. Now, if I try to run the program, it won't run. It says that there are errors. When you get this, 99 times out of 100, if it says, do you want to continue, say no. Because it'll show you then your error. And now it's showing me, hey, there's nothing called focus. But there are going to be other kinds of errors we're going to encounter later that you're going to see that down in here. All right? All right, that's it for those. Again, they gave you their coding recommendations, etc. This is what their code will look like when it's all done. Okay? And I think we're just about finished. Comments I've already shown you. Oh, this was longer than I thought it was. How many? It's 40 slides. Okay. From current slide. Just make sure I didn't miss anything here. Yeah, you can collapse a region of code. So in other words, if I don't want, let's say I don't want this button here, this code to be showing right now. I can click this minus sign and it's hidden. It's still there, but it's hidden from view. And if I click it when it's a plus sign, it brings it back again. Okay, if you want to do that. Oh, I already talked to you about the Intellisense, and that's what this talks about. They talk about code snippets. I'm going to tell you, if you want to read about code snippets in your book, go ahead. I'm going to recommend you don't use them, especially when you first start, because it's easy to put them in incorrectly. And why not learn to do it yourself and do it the right way is my point of view. All right. So let's quickly, that's it for that. Let's quickly jump into the book and see if I missed anything, because we went over it. I'm teaching this class the way that I'm teaching it, and rather than go through every chapter like this, what I'm doing is I'm writing code and a program and showing you the stuff. So when we go back to the book, you've already seen labels, you've already seen text boxes, you've already seen buttons. I think, especially with the audience that I have, and that audience, what I mean is being an online audience, that makes more sense. So what I'd recommend, come to class, of course, or watch the tape, or both, but read what's in the book. There's going to be little golden nuggets that are in here. Some of them I'll remember to tell you. Some of them I'm sure I won't. Not because I don't want to, I'll just forget to. So again, some common properties. We already looked at things like name property, text property. We looked at the accept button. We looked at the start button. We set our start position to center screen. If you want to enable something, it's a true-false property. So if I say .enabled equal false, it will disable it. That's not making it read-only. That's making it so it's disabled. All right, there's the read-only, and there's other ones. We already did the tab index, and we did the text align. All right. How to add navigation features. Okay, I showed you the tab order for the access key just so you see it, because I'm trying to be complete here. Let's go to our exit button. All right, and where it says exit right here, I'm going to come in over here, and where I've got the text for it, where it says the word exit, I'm going to put an ampersand before the letter X, not before the E, because it's convention to do that, and hit enter. Now hopefully you can see that there's an underscore by the X. Kind of hard to see on the screen probably. But if I do a file, save all, and run this, Now with it running, if I do an Alt X, it's the same thing. It's a shortcut for clicking the exit button. All right? Again, I'm trying to be complete here and show you all of this stuff. You can set all sorts of access keys for just about anything. If you have too many, it gets confusing. I'm just telling you that right now. These are what they tell you to call everything if you're going to build this. And then they talk to you about how you can rename. I showed you how to rename the form already. And that's it. So what I'm going to do quickly is this. First thing I want to do is I want to go back to here. And that's not there, sorry. Where is it? There it is. And this will be the first time you will have homework and labs. So I'm going to go to where it says extra exercises. This is not going to be due until the 16th of January. That is midnight, Sunday, January 16th. If, for example, Mr. McLean gets really ambitious and does all of it today and thinks, yeah, it's all done, fine. He can turn it in now. It will not be graded until the 16th. We'll go over how to submit stuff probably tomorrow. But if I look here, here's the homework for Chapter 2. Design a simple form. So they ask you to make this. The only place I disagree with Muroc is they tell you not to rename your labels. All right? And I tell you to rename everything. Your labels, your text boxes, your forms, your buttons. All right? But you should be able to actually do this one right now. They're not asking you to put any code in. They're just asking you to create this. All right? Okay, so that's that. Now, for the labs, these are things that Mr. Smith wrote. So we will have a lab for Chapter 2 and 3. And he gives you some key things to review. And then he says, make this one. And then when you get done, make this one. All right? And what we'll do is, at least one of those, we'll do that as a class. So you get used to doing it. All right? All right. And then finally, the last thing is you will also have in there, so that's your homework and your labs. These are the same slides I'm going over. This is all the material that Muroc provides for the book. So it's all the applications in the book, all the exercises in the book. All right? And for every chapter, you'll have a written test. I'll want you to turn in the written test for 1, 2, and 3 on the 6th or by the 16th of January. So how do you do this? Probably the easiest way is to just come in here. Let's say that number 1 is C. All right? I mean, there's different ways that you can do it. You can highlight it and then click there. Boom. Now it's that color. Or if you don't like that, maybe to make it easier, you can highlight it, go over to where it says fill, and make that red. Something like that. So it sticks out. If you don't like either of those and you literally want to come in here and write, for example, number 1, C, number 2, D. I don't know if those are the right answers or not, but something like that, then do it that way. I have to have you annotate it in some way so that I can tell you've given an answer to the questions. All right? So that's that. So, to go back and review, because this is what we're going to be doing every day. I'm getting you out in 4 minutes. If I'm still talking and it's 11:45, you can leave. Or do whatever you do. Turn me off, get out of it, or whatever. But I want to show you this, and that is, so this is what we wanted to do today. All right? Or is this what it? This is it. So, I asked if there were questions. I explained to you what Git and GitHub are. We're going to start working with that either tomorrow or Monday. We did that simple review exercise where I gave you some time. I reviewed Chapter 1. All right. We did kind of an overview of what Visual Studio is. I went over the PowerPoint slides. For Chapter 2, I went over Chapter 2. We wrote one GUI program. All right. I reviewed the material. So tomorrow we're going to do the same thing, but with Chapter 3. When you come in tomorrow, I'll have one of these. All right? And it'll say Chapter 2 review, and it'll say go over the PowerPoint slides for etc. Plus the review exercise, again, will be for you to try to go back in and go back to that, wherever it was, that taxes console, this one right here, where it says first name, last name, item bought, purchase price, and tax rate, then it gives you this. Try to rewrite that as a GUI app. I'm going to give you, let's say, a half an hour. So from 8:05, 25 minutes, till 8:30 tomorrow, try to write that. And then I'm going to create it before your very eyes, and then we'll go on from there. All right? All right, it is 11:43. My question for you is, are there any questions? Not so much what does this code do or that code, but any procedural type of questions or anything that you feel that I've gone over that doesn't make a lot of sense to you right now. Anybody? Because I'm going to keep asking. I've got to do it when I've got you in there. You're my online captive audience.
Yeah, no questions on my end.
All right.
Everything's been going good.
Okay. All right, so you understand what we'll be doing tomorrow, and just to show you, I'm literally going to grab this, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it in. So tomorrow, I'll say, were there any questions? I'm going to put in here, skip. We'll just do that next week. In fact, I'll put here, if time. We'll maybe do that at the end of the period. I already showed you what the review exercise was. I will very quickly, for that chapter 2 review, see next screen, that's when we will be doing, I'm going to give you the half an hour to work on the review exercise, and then we'll go over it. All right? We don't have to do any more Visual Studio review, so we don't have to do that. So not applicable. For Muroc, I'll go over the PowerPoints for Chapter 3. Then we'll go over Chapter 3 of the text. We'll write one or more, again, GUI and console programs. We'll review, but this thing that I've got up here, if time, I'm going to put down towards end of period. Now, if any of you were either here yesterday or watched the tape from yesterday and were not able to download and install both Git and GitHub, go back and rewatch the tape. All right? Because we'll do this towards the end of the period, and I'm going to show you, because what happens is Microsoft about a year and a half ago bought GitHub. So I'm going to show you how to weave using GitHub right into your programs. And once you do it, it's like, that's all we got to do? Yeah. It's even easier than those of you who were in the JavaScript class last semester than I showed you. It's 11:46. I told you I'd leave at 11:45. Sorry. See you tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Try to get here on time if you can. It makes it easier if I can admit everybody around 8:05 once we start. Thanks.